Welcome to Script Daddy.
And what
I'm
do
your
we do
host,
here?
Colin.
Oh,
Well,
fine. I get excited. I'm Carly and he's Colin. But what do we do here, Colin?
here at Script Daddy, we read scripts, watch the movies, and discuss the differences between script and screen. I
Pow,
added a
pow,
little
pow,
bit of a
pow.
spooky inflection
Ooh,
there
you
because
did.
today is a very
You did.
special Halloween episode. Script
Spooky,
babies.
spooky, scary, scary.
Mhm.
Today is a very exciting day because we have a guest, Andrew Bowser, who we are very excited to have join us. I dare I say king of horror? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
She
We'll
said it.
see.
She said it.
I
It's
said
been
it.
said.
Oops, I said
People are
it.
saying it.
People are saying it. I'm saying it, so it's being said. I'm gonna throw out a little bio, as I said to Andrew. We'll see how I do here. He is a filmmaker, an actor, a writer, and an internet personality, best known for his horror comedy alter ego, Onyx the Fortuitous. His feature film, Onyx the Fortuitous, and the Talisman of Souls premiered at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival after being successfully funded through Kickstarter, which is an absolute big ass accomplishment, by the way. With over 2 decades of experience in the industry, Andrew has directed branded content for Nerdist and collaborated with major names like Funny or Die, a little thing called Blumhouse, Warner Brothers. At the same time, he has built a very strong online presence, amassing over 250,000 subscribers on YouTube and over 1 million followers on TikTok. He is widely recognized for his unique blend of genres, viral video content, and his passion for independent filmmaking. How did I do, Andrew?
That was wonderful.
Yay!
I might just farm that out as my official bio to any other podcasts I go on. That was
I'm
great.
honored. I will send it to you, and you can
Please.
do whatever you please with it. Colin knows I get anxious about doing these sometimes, so whenever I get a gold star, I get very excited.
Yes, no, that was you really covered the bases. I feel seen, very seen.
That's all we could ever dream of. Thank
Yeah.
you for coming and joining us. We're so
Yeah, we're
excited
so
about
excited.
this.
Thank you for having me. As I said before, I'm a fan, and so yeah, I'm excited to be here, without a doubt.
He's
Yeah,
a fan,
it's gonna be a
Colin.
fun.
Don't freak out. Don't
Hey,
scream.
hey, I'm already freaking out internally enough, so I'm gonna keep it together. But yeah, no, we're so excited to have you on here for our special spookalicious season. Just to get the conversation started off, we wanted to ask you, what is it really about, like, the horror genre that lights you up and kind of draws you to it and resonates with you so deeply?
Well, so I was a real scaredy kid. I stayed away from horror for a long time. And, I had a lot of nightmares as a child. Even though I was attracted to Ghostbusters and Gremlins, they still scared me. I remember I bought a ghost toy that I became convinced was possessed and alive. And then I tried to pawn it off to one of my friends. So it was a real wrestling match getting me into horror. But I liked comic books. I liked drawing monsters. And I think around 15 or 16, though, I decided to rip off the Band-Aid and just, exposure therapy, start watching horror films. And then I found that I was in love with them. And they scratched an itch for me that just no other genre does. I think I don't know. I like the genre because it deals with such a wide range of emotions. And, it can be grounded in reality. It can be supernatural. It can just run the gamut of, honestly, what I think can represent the human experience in a way that has more depth than a lot of other genres. So ever since I was a teenager, I've just been all in, and it's always been, I think, blended with my sense of humor or my love for absurd things. As you can see behind me on my shelf are different toys and cartoon characters and a Gremlins lunchbox and a Boglins puppet that I've had since I was a kid. So I just think I kind of feel liberated by the genre, both in my own interests and also as an audience member, but as a creator as well.
Totally. Liberation's a fun word to use when it comes to horror, because I feel like horror is just such a potent tool to explore, like, darker, more taboo sides of human nature and just living in this world, but from, like, a safe vantage point where we can kind of dive into it and explore, like, what creates a monster, or, like, how, like, I don't know, it's just it's a great connector with different things. I love how, like, each decade kind of superimposes its mores upon the horror that comes out in that. So I just think it's such an important genre for storytelling in general. I think that's also why it's so pervasive in our culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your background with like independent filmmaking. I feel like it's like an endlessly interesting topic, and I feel like there's a million ways to break into this industry, quite literally 1 million. There's a new ways every day being invented, and yet there's also, there's also traditional ways, whatever. But I resonate so much with like the indie stuff. I've made a lot of my own stuff, and like the fulfillment of it is just on a whole. I've been fortunate as an actor to do a lot of work professionally on other people's sets, which is its own gorgeous experience. But the getting to like from the very seedling of an idea to creating your set to casting it to doing all that is like the most incredible, fulfilling, chaotic, intense experience that I love so much. But I would love to hear about like a little bit about like what draws you to that and like the Kickstarter experience, because Lord knows everyone knows 10 people who has tried to fund a Kickstarter, and you did it so successfully. So I'd just love to hear a little bit about your experience with that.
Well, you're right that as an indie filmmaker, you really have to fall in love with the entire process. I think I discovered that bit by bit. As a kid, I wanted to be an actor, and I'm from the DC, Virginia area. I did a lot of local theater, and I thought, okay, that's what I love. I love acting. And then as I got into high school, I maybe it was just what I was going through personally, but I hated auditioning. I used to be good at auditioning as a kid, and then as I got older, I got too in my head, and I hated the feeling of walking into an audition with something prepared. I remember auditioning for the movie The Client back in the day, and they had said, do an accent, do some kind of Southern accent. And my mother's from Oklahoma, so I prepped it, and I went in, and the casting director stopped me after one line and said, no, wait, no accents. They don't treat kids any different than adult performers.
They don't.
And even though all I had to do was then drop the Southern drawl, it still just spun me out because I had practiced certain words to really make it convincing. And I as I got older, I thought, well, gosh, I'm not good at this acting thing. And so I started writing and realized, oh, that's what I love, is writing. And then I started wanting to shoot what I was writing. So in high school, I started taking photos that were really like storyboards of what I had written, a short film script or whatever. And then I thought, ooh, I love making the visual that accompanies my writing. And if I could time travel, I just would have told that kid, like, yeah, you want to be a filmmaker, dude. Like, get to it. But I discovered it in pieces. And then I went to film school, and the summer after my freshman year of film school, I shot a feature in my hometown where I was back for the summer. And then I thought I'll get some editing major to edit it during my sophomore year. So I gave the hard drive to a guy. He had it for 3 months. I came back to watch a cut, and he was like, I didn't touch it, man. Here's your hard drives back. So
you said, I got to learn it.
So then in that moment, I remember I went to school at SVA in New York, and he was in like a 7-story walk up. And as I was walking down with those hard drives in my hands, I just thought, like, never again. I will never have the power to finish something be in someone else's hands. I mean, it's tricky, though, because you're always going to need collaborators.
Totally.
You're always going to need financing. So you always do need someone else. But I think I've learned over the years that as an independent filmmaker, you can have the drive to get really far with a project if you learn as many of the skill sets required. And then I started making tiny experimental films and put myself in them, which was really just because I couldn't convince any of my friends to go and shoot an experimental film in Oklahoma where they're wearing a GoPro on their chest for a one-take film. So anyway, the irony is that I thought I was just learning these things in pieces, but that one day I would just be a director and I'd be getting other people's scripts and I'd be not editing my own films. But now, the film that got me to Sundance, which is something that I dreamt about my entire life, was something that was homegrown, that I wrote, directed, acted in, edited. So it was just kind of weirdly poetic to then be at that festival and think, oh, it was me doing what I've done all along that actually got me here. Even the creation of that character was me just kind of being restless and wanting to shoot something. And while I had another job that was taking me to like horror conventions and gaming conventions. But to your point about the Kickstarter, one of my, videos had gone viral enough that I thought I could get a micro budget feature going. So I wrote a number of pitches and went out, didn't have representation, but I had enough connections from working at Nerdist and Funny or Die to kind of get some meetings. And it was just square peg into a round hole. I mean, if Borat had done well, then it was, well, can you do an Onyx movie where you're pranking people? And, if, I don't know what, one of the Jackass movies had done well, they're like, what if we were in old age makeup and you drove a scooter into a grocery store? It was never actually about Onyx.
Yeah.
And so right at the end of the pandemic, I just thought maybe the character has enough exposure online now to leverage that into crowdfunding. And it did, but it was a full-time job. I worked at a place called G4 when they were relaunching the video game network, and I had started my Kickstarter, and I immediately realized I have to quit G4. This is 24 hours a day, because I needed to raise about $10,000 a day. So every day you had to wake up and think,
how much did you raise?
We raised about $620,000.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
My God, I did not know. That is,
that's
incredible.
No shit. That's an everyday, all day. Oh my God, Andrew.
It was all day, and truly was all organic. Like I didn't put $1 of my own money in. I didn't send a friend, 5 or 10 grand to put in as a donor. Like, it was me messaging out this content every day to try to overturn every rock of, like, do you remember my character? I went viral a couple years ago. Do you like him? Do you want to see me do more? So it was an effort for sure. But very rewarding, because then you have those 7,000 backers that are then a part of your journey.
Absolutely.
Being able to tell them, we got into Sundance. I mean, they were so excited. It made the whole process more fulfilling. Not that it wouldn't have been very fulfilling to just get some financing from, a studio out here, but I've just kind of reconciled that's my journey, I think, is figuring out a way forward at all costs. And sure, I would love to make something that doesn't have to be so homegrown and kind of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. But I also know I'm not going to stop creating at this point. So if I've been back to Kickstarter 3 or 4 times now for short films and music videos. And
well, it kind of becomes your superpower when you don't need to wait on anyone else. It goes from what feels like a weakness to an absolute superpower.
Yes, and it's not weirdly loved out here. The energy. I find that a lot of people, I've been writing a script that is a much bigger project. It's a $15 million horror film. And for the last year, I've been trying to find a way forward with it. And when I don't hear back from someone that I think might be interested, I've already sent that script to 10 other people. Yeah. Or I've already shot a proof of concept for it. Or I've already shot a short film that will start running in festivals that might help me pitch that big feature in 6 months. And as I'm doing all that, there's plenty of people around me that are like, slow down, dude. Slow down. We need to wait to hear from that one company. And I'm like, at this point, I can't. It's just not even in my DNA. I'm going to wait for a phone call that might never come. Like, fool me once, fool me twice. That was 15 years ago when I would have fall for that. But a lot of people out here really like the stagnancy.
Yeah.
I think just because it takes the responsibility off of them to get activated. Totally. And so I'm thankful that I don't find any comfort in that at all.
Oh my God, I love it.
It's a hurry up and wait game.
Love it. Well, we could literally do this forever. Yes, it is. It is.
It is.
Things to get into.
Should we get into?
I think we should.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So when we have guests, we like to give them the full Script Daddy experience. So we had Andrew pick our film for today. So Andrew, tell us what we're doing and tell us why you chose this film.
Okay, so I chose Scream, and the reason, not only do I love Scream, but specifically, the thing that I have been writing, a big note that I keep getting is, can it be more like Scream? And I don't know if they're talking about the current Scream or this original Scream that we're going to discuss, but it is still just such a touchstone for a modern, even though now it's dated, but it is still a touchstone for a modern kind of meta approach to the genre, that it still comes up in meetings when you're pitching right now. And I had never read the original script, but I love Wes Craven and I love Kevin Williamson because of Scream. I wasn't like a big, Dawson's Creek fan or whatever, but probably because at that age I was jealous of all the people on the show. But I've never actually read the script and compared it to the film and thought about what did Wes Craven bring that wasn't on the page? What was Williamson through and through? What were the performers doing that wasn't on the page? So I just felt it would be a good film and script to bring into your format, because I've always been curious, where did this iconic thing come from? Where did this character beat come from? And I wanted to dig in to all of that with Scream.
We are gonna dig, baby.
Let's get digging. Carly,
Let's
give us the stats.
I'm gonna give you the stats. All right. The original Scream, 1996. Like, what? That's so crazy that you were saying that. Like, yeah, it's still referenced 1996. Like, come on. Yeah. This log line, as it's a runner here on this show, is quite quick, Colin, from IMDb. This is our quickest one Deborah. Yet. A masked killer targets... Okay, it's a masked killer targets a past victim's daughter.
Done.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I can't say I love or hate it. It just exists. Yes.
It is.
Simply yes. It is. The director is Wes Craven. The writer is Kevin Williamson. It is starring Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette. Although there's so many other names in it. That's what IMDb chose to really
why do I
zoom
always
in
forget
on.
Rose McGowan's in this movie?
Dare I say it's because her hair color is so bizarre that you it threw me off so many times, because I was like, it was like such an in-between hair color that it literally I don't associate her with that at all, that I think that was like part of it. I always forget she's in it too. It's weird. So weird. The budget was $15 million. The gross was $103 million worldwide. And the trivia. Okay, I got some yummy trivia. There's quite a bit, so I'm just gonna cherry pick the ones that are most interesting. Drew Barrymore was originally cast as Sydney, but suggested playing Casey for more impactful opening scene. Producer Carrie Woods she called me and said, I want to play girl number 1. When I explained that character gets killed on page 18, she said, if you kill me at the beginning, the audience will think anything can happen. Which is an absolute read on her part.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
it's
I literally
so
got chills when I first read that, because I was like, she's 100% right.
And then that became such a trope for the franchise moving forward, for better or for worse, that we start off with a cameo kill. And that came from her.
So iconic.
And she's on the poster
Molly
too.
Ringwald.
Did you
Kevin
that?
Williamson wrote the role with Molly. Yeah, which is so a business thing. The industry being like, here's Drew Barrymore, despite her being in it for 5 minutes. But you know what? You do what you got to do. Kevin Williamson wrote the role with Molly in mind, Molly Ringwald, but she turned it down, feeling she could not convincingly play a high school student at 27, which is made me laugh, because I feel like now, that is a thing of the past. There are 27-year-olds playing high schoolers on the daily on every streaming platform you've ever watched.
Well, and I feel like the actors that did wind up in Scream were 25 at the time, weren't they? 24? I mean, yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, they weren't 16 and 17.
No. So very strange. The party scene near the end of the film runs 42 minutes long. It was shot over the course of 21 days, from the time the sun set to the time it rose. After it wrapped, the crew had shirts made that read, I survived scene 118, which was the name of the scene during shooting. The cast and crew jokingly called it the longest night in horror history. Obsessed and in love with that information.
That's awesome.
Do we do a small run of those shirts? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway.
I'd buy one.
Courtney Cox approached the production to pursue the role. She was interested in playing a bitch character to offset her nice friend's image. This image was the main reason why the producers initially refused to consider her. She continued to lobby the studio as she felt she could believably play the character, and ultimately she succeeded. And she absolutely slayed.
She really did. She really brought more to Gale than I realized was on the page. Gale's a great character on the page, but she brought layers to Gale that, girl, she can really act. She's like, I'm going to show you. I'm going to remind you I was a film actor before I was on TV. Thank you.
No, again, this is why it's such yummy trivia. All of it, I was like, yeah, it just made me happy for everyone. I was like, yeah, good choices were made over and over and over again. At the beginning of the movie, when Casey's parents come home to find something's wrong, her father tells her mother to go to the Mackenzies, which is the same thing Lori, Jamie Lee Curtis, told Lindsay, Kyle Richards, and Tommy, Brian Andrews, to do in Hollywood, in Halloween 1978. Of which this movie contains many references. So obviously we'll dive more into that, but I thought that was really actually adorable that he found so many little ways to inject it, where again, anyone who listens to the pod, this is not like my go-to genre, but part of why I love this podcast so much is because it has allowed me to like see and experience these genres with a whole different understanding than I initially did. And I felt like that was one of the things that I would not have noticed. Like I would not have caught that in any way. And so learning that and learning how much of this script is an ode to these other things I thought was really fun and awesome. This is okay. Matthew Lillard was cast as Stu by chance after accompanying his then girlfriend to an unrelated audition taking place elsewhere in the same building. The casting director saw Lillard in the hallway and asked him to audition for the part. He got the role with incredible ferocity.
That's something that could never happen now with everybody having to do self-tapes from home. Those stories of passing by the casting director in the hallway.
I know. It makes me sad to think about, actually.
Like the story about how Harrison Ford got cast in Star Wars. Like that's just not going to happen these days. It's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
The Linda Blair has a quick little, it's hard to even say cameo because you miss her if you blink. She's one of the reporters when she says people want to know, they have a right to know. And then Wes Craven is also in it as the janitor. He's wearing a red and green striped sweater, just like Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. And it actually is the real clothes from A Nightmare on Elm Street, which I thought was, once again, genius. I know cute is a weird word, but like adorable. Like that's an adorable, like fanboy thing to do. It's adorable. The last few here is the inspiration for the screenplay came to Kevin one night when he was watching a documentary on a serial killer, Danny Harold Rowling. Rowling killed 5 students after sneaking into their apartments. Later that night, he found Williamson found an open window in his house that he was certain was shut before. He spent the rest of the night searching the house, terrified, with a knife in his hand, talking to a friend on the phone. He wrote the first draft of the script and a treatment for 2 sequels over the next 3 days. I loved that. That is divine inspiration.
Absolutely. I love to see how stories come through.
And that was something that, and I know we'll get into it, but I was surprised reading this script that it was clear in this first script that he had plans for a second or even third movie. But I didn't know that until you just said that. But when I read the script, it felt like he had already figured out a way forward.
Totally. I totally agree. And then the last one I thought was really fun was this script sparked a bidding war. The screenplay generated a lot of heat in Hollywood. Paramount, Universal, Morgan Creek, and Weinstein's company all put in bids for it. Williamson ultimately went with Dimension, who paid $400,000 for it. This was less than what some of the other companies offered, but he thought the film had more of a chance of being made. And I thought that was so interesting. So that is our trivia. And Andrew, we're going to have you start us off with your Script Daddy score for the screenplay.
Oh, what is our scale?
1 to
1
10.
through 10.
Just 1 to 10. To be honest, I mean, I hate to start off like hyperbolic, but it's hard to take the movie out of the script.
I agree.
And as I was reading it, I thought, even coming down to like Gail, when I read the description for Gail, I could picture a kind of 2-dimensional version of her, but I didn't, because I pictured Courtney Cox. So in trying to just take it as a screenplay, I still think it's so taut and it's so vivid, and even trying to take the performances out of my head, they still were so alive that I think it would have to hit at least an 8 for me.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Colleen?
I landed at 8.5 out of 10. And this is what I wrote after reading. I said, overall, this script is a fun and effective ride. I love how cheeky the writer's voice is on the page. Even though we're dealing with the brutal subject matter of teenage slaughter, it's handled with such style and energy Overall, this script is a fun and effective ride. I love how cheeky the writer's voice is on the page. Even though we're dealing with the brutal subject matter of teenage slaughter, it's handled with such style and energy that you're always reminded that you're watching a movie. It's disarming in a way that also serves as a great contrast to the very real creep factor on the page. The writer even fully breaks the fourth wall at times, directly addressing the reader, like on page 69 when it says, Sid follows Tatum inside the house, never seeing the ghost masked killer that stands across the street under a tree. His presence is so subtle and unobtrusive, you'd have to see the movie a second time to know that he was there all along. The self-aware storytelling style firmly sets this film apart from other horror classics. It's simultaneously a love letter to horror, while also providing a tongue-in-cheek cautionary tale about how those movies have caused the general public to become numb to violence and gore. Equal parts scary movie and social commentary. Scream is one of those films that will always endure, especially during spooky season.
So my thoughts on it were, I always struggle with gathering all of like my why behind my scores, because one of my big things is it like literally well written from like a format standpoint? And this script absolutely is. Like, it's absolutely well written and it's clear, it's easy to follow, whatever. The main reason it was lower than I was expecting was because the dialogue really took me out so many times. I was just like frustrated.
Was it? Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Was it dialogue that made its way into the film, or was some of the dialogue that was okay? Because there was some stuff that took me out, but then I would see it wasn't in the movie. I was like, oh wow.
So it was. I would say solely from the reading the script experience, like and my score, the dialogue was a big part of why it was lower, was just because, like you said, some of it was not in the film, but some of it was. Some of it just felt so egregious to me and like so like hard to like not hard to follow. It was clear, but just like not great dialogue. And I think the only other thing that, now granted, I will fully own, I have not read a lot of like slasher horror scripts, so I don't have a ton to compare it to, but I think I imagined I'd be a little bit more freaked out on the page. Like, I would feel more scared on the page, and I can honestly say I was more scared reading Sixth Sense than I was reading this, and that was so surprising to me. Like, I had to really realize that I was like, oh shit, I really thought I was going to be scared. And I'm not. There wasn't one moment reading this that I felt scared or even really anxious, which was surprising to me. So I kind of, that being said, after I read it from start to finish, and then I started doing like the research with the trivia and stuff like that, and like seeing some of the whys behind him writing it and the screenwriter's like obsession with horror films and all that stuff, and seeing the way he was able to kind of seamlessly put these odes to these other classic films in there. I was originally at a 6.8, and then that made me go to a 7, because I was like, I did not know that. Like, I didn't know that reading it. So that originally I was like a 6.8, but feeling like I had more of an understanding for the genre and the world, I was impressed by that. So I landed on a 7.
It's higher than I was expecting from you, to be honest.
Okay. Well, like I said, it was a 6.8, and like if we want to discredit the research that I did, that then made me go back, like from a soul reading perspective, 6.8, but with the understanding of the fact that people who really love this genre would read this and watch it too, and go like, look at all the places he took influence from. That I was impressed by, and I felt like I couldn't have known that from reading it. So yeah, I float somewhere between a 6.8 and a 7.
I though agree with you on the topic of it not reading scary. And what's interesting is I get that note all the time. That note has driven me insane because especially on this current project I've been writing, I have been told many times, I don't know, it's just not reading scary. And they'll send me examples of other script. Read this, read that. And I'll read them and I'll go, well, this isn't reading scary to me either. And I've always wondered, is it because I'm so inundated with horror? I don't know the last time I was actually, I'm scared for existential reasons of, real life. But I did think, okay, reading Scream is going to really help me understand what writing scary feels like. And you're right. There's barely any mood. There's barely any tone setting. And I'm not saying that's a negative when it comes to what eventually was executed on the day, because clearly Wes Craven showed up with all of his
Absolutely.
tricks. But the script is very bare bones, and doesn't feel concerned with making the reader feel unnerved. Maybe the first sequence, but really everything else is kind of like, I got stabbed, moving on. I stabbed a couple times, moving on. Yeah, it's really brief.
Yeah, and especially because the first scene is 18 pages.
Yeah.
We are taking you through it. I mean, that would never happen now. Like, you would not see an 18-page intro of a slasher killing someone. But it almost like, I thought like, oh, is it because it's bogging you down? Then I was like, no, like I at no point was really that freaked out. And I just was shocked by that. And again, like Colin and I, the reason I said Sixth Sense is that Colin and I were surprised how kind of like freaked out we were reading Sixth Sense.
Right.
They really did find a way. Now, granted, the juxtaposition going on there was you had a baseline of tenderness in a script that you also didn't totally expect that made the switch to creepy unsettling. And also, I will say the screenwriter made literal page choices, like formatting choices that like allowed you to feel like you were like feeling along with it, that where this was not at all. Like,
Can I ask, not to I think this is part of the conversation, but is the Sixth Sense script more literary in how it's written? You know, is there more description? Is there more?
Yeah. It's beautiful.
They build the atmosphere and the tone out more, and the character work is so well honed that you really, really, really care to go along this journey. And they bury the twist really well in that script, which I think this script does a good job at setting up a red herring.
I agree.
That's what my biggest takeaway from this was. Like, again, I didn't feel scared as I was just talking about this with my brother on the phone earlier today, who's also a filmmaker, and I was said the same thing where like I wasn't like scared necessarily while reading it, but then I've also realized that like the horror scripts that we have read so far, I'm not like really, really scared. Like Sixth Sense was more of like a grossed out, creeped out feeling, just because some of the things that you see in the way it's described. But with this, I think the best example for this was that, or the best takeaway for this was that they give you the twist within the first like 15 pages. No, not first 15. Within the first like 30 pages, you see that Billy is the killer, but then they do all these different tricks to make you second guess your judgment there, to show like why he's not, and they set up all these different red herrings, and in that aspect of the script I think is really well done.
I agree.
Because it does keep you guessing. And
I agree.
When Billy and Stu come out to be like the ultimate like killers, Stuart's involvement is a real big shock. But yeah, it's not it. The thing that I liked was that like I was able to overlook some of the dialogue, because to me some of the lackluster dialogue kind of played into this B movie quality of it, because it's hearkening back to all these different horror films, and it's like I said, this love letter to it. And like you're dealing with teenagers getting murdered. So I think if you went a little bit more realistic with some of the things, it could have skewed more towards like a hardened social commentary on things, instead of more like,
oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Like a praise of like what's come before it. But it also does have social commentary in it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I took I haven't quite figured out the language around this, but there was something as I read it that felt like some of the dialogue, maybe he's almost mocking teenage culture, or maybe he was even, looking at it in a petri dish in a way that, that it was making him laugh.
Yes.
Because there was some antagonistic energy even to like his perspective as a writer towards these people. But even in sometimes his descriptions, I forget. I wrote down a bunch, but there was one character description that I highlighted because he said something like, she's so-and-so, she's something, she's a bitch, or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but he said it so succinctly. I was like,
he did have some
descriptions are really cheeky.
I'm excited to get into it because I wrote some down too, where I definitely did think one of his strong suits was like, there was almost more voice on his character descriptions than in a lot of the
Very
other,
true.
like it almost felt like I felt like I was more aware of his voice there than in any other part, because the dialogue at certain moments, Colin, that's such an interesting point, because I did ask myself, I was like, what would I want different about this dialogue? And I think for me, I'm always a person that like really, no matter the genre, my preference so often is to try to make something as grounded as it can be. So that way I am more in on whatever the other thing is. So like that way I'm more freaked out by this killer, because I feel like it can happen to me, because they're talking not necessarily I don't need someone to talk exactly like me. It's just that I felt like the dialogue in this film felt like movie dialogue, and that had to have been on purpose. And I respect that it was on purpose. It was just the reading experience of it was like at times jarring, because it was just like, dear God, like in particular, like the scene, not to get ahead of myself, but like the scene with Sydney and Billy when like he climbs up her window and he's like, I've been watching The Exorcist, and all the things they cut out of it, and like our relationship used to feel like it was like NC-17 and now it's PG-13. I literally was like,
now we're edited for TV.
I was like,
I have seen Scream like probably 30 times or more, and yet when I read that dialogue in the script, I said, well, that's not in the movie.
Yeah,
and
really?
I don't know.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I was like,
it's very much there.
I know. And then it's like, what? Did I remove that because I didn't like the way it felt in the film? Because it was not in my memory that he gave that speech about being edited for TV. It's so funny to me that
and again, though, you're right, Colin, that it's like there is a self-awareness to it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's kind of brutal. Like it's kind of brutal.
I think that's the secret sauce of the Scream franchise, is that it is so self-aware and it makes fun of itself in those moments. Like the moment at the end where, I mean, we still have to do our movie score stuff, but whatever.
Yes.
This is fun.
This is Script Daddy, baby.
The moment at the end when Stu, when they've just stabbed each other to give them an alibi, like Sydney knows that they're the killers, everything. And there's a moment where Stu it's one of my favorite lines of dialogue from the whole movie. It's very, very iconic, I think, is when Stu's sitting there and he's on the phone. Sydney now is like toying with them, like, yeah, I just fucking called the cops on you guys, da da da. And then Stu's sitting there and he's dying, he's bleeding out. And it's like this very brutal imagery that we're seeing, and like very realistic, because like you have the juxtaposition of like the fake blood on Billy's shirt mixed with the real blood that's darker coming out of that. But then Stu's sitting there and he's like, did you really call the cops? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, my mom and dad are gonna be so mad at me. And like that is such an iconic line, because it's funny and it breaks through what you're seeing and it reminds you like, oh, we're like this, we're exploring this, but it's also we're exploring it like with a lot of like jokiness to it. We're not supposed to take it too seriously.
And that line,
do you remember?
Is that in the script?
It's not.
Yeah, I didn't think it
right?
was.
Yeah.
I was trying to catch the Lillard strays. I was like, which of these are in the script and which are coming from him? And there were more in the script than I expected. Yeah.
His line reads like the line read when they're saying like, you never say I'll be right back because that means they're gonna die. And the way he's like, I'll be right back. Like he adds like this Bela Lugosi kind of like ridiculousness to it. But I think like without those moments, it wouldn't be Scream. Like there's plenty of other slasher movies that you can go that are self-serious, that want you to be scared and all this.
Totally.
This like wants you to be scared, but it wants to disarm you by having fun with it, which I think is just really unique.
And I think sometimes it feels so light on its feet. And I think in order to get it light on its feet and keep it moving, and I hate to say you have to sacrifice reality and a grounded sense of emotion to all these characters. But the scene where Tatum and Sydney are just walking up to school after Casey has been murdered. And didn't you hear? She got murdered. And it's so casual. And you would expect Sydney to be like, what the? You fall to the ground, but they just keep moving, get into the school, get on with the day. And I'm thinking, if I read that, which I did, but if I read that, I'd be like, well, this isn't realistic. But the alternative might be something that just takes you down to far into reality. So with horror, always there has to be this blend of, this has to be a reality where this isn't too mind-blowing for these characters.
Yeah.
Or else we're gonna get stuck in one scene forever. Of them just being like, oh, God.
And it's going to be exhausting to see them absolutely, completely, and utterly distraught
devastated.
all the time. Yeah, totally.
And then
quite
the end,
callous about it though.
Oh,
especially
with
so
Sydney,
callous.
the way they talk around her, I'm
oh my gosh.
My notes,
her mother was brutally murdered a year ago, and
brutally
Billy's like, you need to get over that.
Yeah. Even
guys,
Tatum in the beginning, she's like, well, it's the first time this has happened since, and I'm like,
your
your
best
friend's
friend.
mom being
your
murdered?
best friend. And also, by the way, my notes towards the end are in all caps. I'm angry at someone because that of all of it, I can forgive the other shit, but that was one part where I was like, it lives in a weird space to pull off something as enormous as her mother was raped and murdered, and everyone's a little bit like, that was a year ago, Sydney, and you're like,
yeah,
a year ago is like might as well be a month. Like, what are you talking about?
For sure. And then I know this is getting way ahead of things, but by the time the principal's killed, it's off screen. Oh, the murder's not, but they're like, oh, he's strung up on the football field. Let's go.
Yeah, before they take him down, you're like,
let's go see him. Take him down. You want to go see a mutilated dead body?
Although, you guys, did you also? This was my thought process with that, Andrew. Is I literally had the same thought. I was like, dear God, and then I had a really sickening follow-up thought, which was like, honestly, though, our culture is in such a fucking weird place right now that there are some weird ass people that would probably think and say that. Now, granted, I don't think he wrote that necessarily because he was thinking, oh, a bunch of people would react like that, but I just feel like some people would.
Yeah.
I kind of think the purpose of that was to show, like, because there's other shades of this commentary in there about the desensitization of violence through media.
Absolutely.
And like my biggest takeaway of like when I read like my movie assessment was like how there is such a commentary on the media's exploitation of violence in society. And how, and I think in the 90s, there's a lot of talk about like violence in video games and violence in movies and its impact upon children and stuff like that. So I think he's kind of poking.
I agree.
And trials being, live on E! News or whatever. And like the cotton weary of it all. Feeling like it's kind of out of that.
And I kind
space.
of like, again, I almost wish they had explored the cotton weary a little bit more because I found it to be that's, I think, actually one of my, we're getting so ahead. So we're going to do the movie scores in 2 seconds, but that is one of my favorite parts in the screenplay and in the film is the scene with Sydney and Gail when when she goes up to her after she had hit her and all that. And it's actually a very impressive dialogue scene because there's so much not being said. And like, there's a lot of subtext. Arguably the most subtext of the entire film happens very, very beautifully in that scene. Like you get exactly what you need to know, but you can feel everything underneath it that then adds later on. But they really give you the very least with Cotton Weary, which I get why they didn't need a whole other plot of it. But like it was quite interesting too. Like obviously it would be a completely different film if they really explored that. But I just thought that scene between the two of them was probably the best written scene in my opinion of the whole film. Okay, that being said, Andrew, what is your movie score?
So interestingly enough, even though I'm here to praise Scream flat out, when I first saw it, I think I saw it in theaters, like as a teenager. I didn't like it. And I don't remember why, but I was trying to go back into my mind palace and remember, I think I had a chip on my shoulder. I was just starting to write and I was just starting to explore, well, what would my vision for a horror film be? And then I sat and watched a slasher. I liked Neve Campbell, but it's not like I was a fan of Party of Five. It's like some of these people, I don't know. There was something about it that turned me off as a teenager. Maybe I thought it was, I couldn't clock how inventive it was. I think I thought, well, here's another slasher. I want something more supernatural, or I was always more of a fan of monster movies and supernatural horror. So I think it kind of, to be transparent, went over my head when I saw it at that age. Gremlins 2 did not go over my head when I saw that, though, as a child. So in my defense, I can get meta.
Note that.
Yeah, I can get the metatextual approach to film. But so it wasn't until then, I think maybe I was in college when I rewatched Scream and I really started to appreciate it. And now since then, I've rewatched it and rewatched it and rewatched it. But so for me, what I think is so fascinating about it, and I know that we'll get into it as we kind of parse through the script versus the movie, but I really think it's a perfect storm of the right script. It's what everybody says when a movie works. The right script with the right director and the right cast. But it really does feel like a confluence of all those things hitting at a time when also the genre needed a movie like that. So it's just it was such a small target to hit. And I think it required all of those parties to hit that target. I think Wes Craven being kind of somewhat tired of the genre helped.
Agreed.
Yeah. Totally. And so my movie score is 9. And the only reason it's not 10 is because, and this is still related to the script, but it's all in the movie. I'm obsessed with, there's no really good way to do it, but I like grounded or rather organic kind of lived in exposition, an experienced exposition. But the film doesn't really have room for that. So it does rely on, there's a TV giving you the info. I mean, that happens like 5 times. And I, as a writer, I'd be like, you can't do that. You can't just show the TV and the news. But as you were saying, Colin, in its defense, it's also thematically about that. So it's not as much of a cheat. I think in a lot of films, you'll be in the middle of a movie that's saying nothing about media and nothing about the influence of it on our culture, et cetera. And a character will still just see something on the news to get us information. Yeah. So it's not as much of a cheat in Scream because her life is becoming a tabloid and it goes even more in that direction over the course of the franchise.
That's a really good point. That's a really good differentiation, actually. Like, we just found a Daddy Do in the Wild, which is my favorite way, which is like, if you're going to utilize, like, you just parsed that out so brilliantly and it just came off the dome so organically. But exactly to your point, their utilization or overutilization of using the television as giving us information worked actually to this film's benefit. But if your film is not in some way a little bit of a commentary on that, it is a weak point. And it's not really in this film.
No. And the only other thing that kind of bumps me, and it bothers me through a number of the entries, is I know that this is the only way they could have done it, but there's a rule in improv. I'm going to not quote it exactly how it should be quoted, but where you kind of, the most interesting thing should be happening in the moment or on the stage instead of like, man, I'm really tired. I just, fought a dinosaur before getting here. And instead it should be like, oh my God, there's a dinosaur here. There is something to Scream that, like, it's always bothered me a little that everything with her mother is off screen. And we're just launched into this, like, well, you're the one that put him away. It was your testimony. Even though it's still such a well-written scene to get us that information, the year ago murder of the mother being so off screen always made me feel a little disconnected from Sydney's journey. And I still felt like that reading it. I always thought, well, maybe in the original script, we see some of it. I don't know, flashbacks, or I doubt there was ever a cold open of that murder. But just to read the script and go, oh, it's still kind of just as backgroundy.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's hurt me being able to engage in Scream in different ways over the franchise, because it's always about the mom and it's always about the Sydney. And I'm always like, I never even lived through that,
Yeah.
But
that's
but you
really
can't.
Good point.
That is a very good point.
There's not enough real estate, in that script to have it have happened on camera. And in a way, it's very smart to have started it a year later. But it also then just maybe pulls me out a little bit of her emotional journey. Yeah,
it's interesting because, like, the story is in such a large part about her mother's murder, but that's also the linchpin of why we're going to want to care for Sydney and her journey as a character. But instead, it's not really about that. We're just supposed to care for Sydney because she's in mortal danger.
Yeah.
Right? That's like the main focus is don't get stabbed and die.
Yeah.
But like they keep hearkening back to the mother of it all. And I think, like, just to bring it way back full circle about the difference between that and Sixth Sense is that is really what it is. That there's no real characters that you really care about other than, in a weird way, Ghostface, because you're caring about when's he going to pop up again. Because I do remember being horrified by this movie as a child. But like, it is funny because it's not like the most textbook scary thing.
Yeah.
which is odd.
Also, Colin, we have to be the only people in the history of ever that are comparing Scream to Sixth Sense and multiple. Like we're like just to harken back to Sixth Sense again. Like we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I almost wonder, and I know this is such a bad note. I'm going to be never invited back on this podcast. But I know that by the end of it, it's kind of all about her mother. But I just wonder if we needed the mother of it all.
Honestly,
like
you could take it out and probably have just as an effective of a film.
Because sometimes it's distracting, and the language around it all. I mean, I know they're all being gross people about it, but the language around it all, and it all coming down to like, don't you remember your mom and my dad? And I have a hard time keeping track of like who slept with who. But Cotton Weary also slept with her, but he didn't kill her. And at a certain point, I was like, I could have seen a note being like, can we just clean this up and yank all that out and just have it be what's happening now and why, and it'd be something that maybe happened in front of us or within that school year or something. I don't know. But again, bad note to give on a movie that was wildly successful.
Yeah.
But it is interesting why it was so wildly successful, because there are this is, I think, one of the most fascinating things about art is no matter how much someone fucking hates something or fucking loves something, there is an audience who says otherwise. And therefore there is no real right or wrong there, but there are things we can mine from it in people's exploration of wanting to become masterful storytellers of whatever story they're telling. There's no perfect ingredient. There's no anything, but it's like, that's, I think, what Colin and I are so obsessed with and why we want to do the podcast. It's like, we can never exactly know, okay, it's this formula. In fact, Colin and I have been talking recently about how frustrating it is to see, and I know we talked about this with you a little bit, Andrew, when we originally talked to you, that like so many people are looking for, here is the secret sauce that's going to make your script pop. And the truth is, there is no exact secret sauce, but the best we can do is do what we're doing and read a shit ton of produced scripts, watch the films, and talk about what works, what doesn't, while still understanding. And sometimes none of the rules apply. And this movie just did so well because it was the right time, right place. And whereas like if it came out today for the first time, it probably would not land the way it did then. And so it's like, that's the kind of the gorgeous and frustration of being a writer and a screenwriter, is that it's like it all comes back to then trusting your own compass and process of going like, you have to come back to that above all else, because hearing one person say you have to do it this way because this is how I did it, or you have to do it this way because this person did it that way and they were successful. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't.
And I think that people have a hard time understanding what problems can get solved through casting, performance, the cinematography, the score. I think sometimes at the script stage, one of the things that I'm fascinated with, and I imagine you both are as well, is and I'm going through this right now with the project I'm pitching. The people I'm pitching to, I think, are imagining that a script gets to a point where it is undeniable. And I've even heard that term. They've said, well, we want to walk it into this studio once it's undeniable. And I don't want to sound like a lazy writer, but as a pragmatist, I'm like, it will never be. No script will ever be. The only thing that makes something undeniable out here is, the rock gets attached or whatever. Like a script as a script will never feel like every problem solved, everything is polished, every plot hole is stitched up. And I'm trying to explain to people sometimes when I pitch that, what's bothering you about this draft? You say this character doesn't feel likable or vulnerable. That's a performance note. Because trust me, the foundation for her being likable and vulnerable is there, and we're going to dial it up on the day. But they think everything has to be on the page. And I don't know how to, other than making every executive out here also go through film school and write 70 scripts and then do podcasts like this, how they will ever learn that even with Scream, you read that script and you think, I think it'll work. I mean, I don't know.
It's certainly not an undeniable script.
It's not an undeniable script.
It's not an undeniable. No one could have read it and said without a shred of doubt, this is like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, it had a bidding war, but that was also the timing of it.
Yeah.
And,
and I bet it went into production. I don't know. This is, but I bet it went into production with somebody still saying you need to shift and change. All right, I guess we're shooting. Cool. I'm sure there's someone that was hesitant to even shoot that draft. And we can get into this, but I was surprised at some of the issues I had with the script, just the structure of it, were totally solved by the editing. They rearranged a lot of the scenes towards the end. That especially everything as it plays out in the finale, I was like, oh, then they do this. Oh, then Kenny dies. Oh, and I said, see, a lot of that is just something you could have said at the script stage needed to be fixed, but they shot it and they just edited it correctly.
Yeah.
Colin, I just realized, did you say your script score?
I have not.
No.
This is by far in the history of our podcast the furthest we've got. We are knee deep, and we're like, what's a score really? What even is a score?
Who can say? Who can say?
Who can say?
My script score is also a 9 out of 10. I was gonna do an 8.8 out of 10, but I went to 9 because
wait, your movie score or your script score?
My movie score. Sorry, my movie score. I was gonna do 8.8 because my script score is 8.5. I was gonna do 8.8, and I thought going into this is gonna be a 10 out of 10 on both. I did because I love this movie, but I landed on a 9 because I have to honor the cultural impact that this movie had, and no movie can be that big and spawn this big of a franchise without being a good story. Like it is good storytelling because people do really, really
respond to it.
Respond to it. That's the word. But here's what I wrote after reading it, after watching it, which is a bit different than my other movie takes because I kind of tunnel vision on one thing, but here we go. It says, horror always reflects the social mores of the era in which it's made, and as a film, Scream has a lot to say. While I've seen this movie many times since it was first released, this is the first time I've watched it and fully realized what a blistering commentary on mass media it is. Gale Weathers is the ultimate personification of the amoral, bloodthirsty 24-hour news cycle that's had a chokehold on our society for decades. I believe this aspect of the narrative is one of the main reasons the franchise is still relevant to this day, spawning seemingly endless sequels and spinoffs. Scream's unique secret sauce of meta-realism, satire, and comedy has the ability to reflect the horrors of our modern society in a way that feels brutally entertaining, reminding us that the powers that be will always continue to play upon our fears in order to create profit. And the thing that really hit that home for me was that because it's really apparent, that commentary, when you sit and actually watch it, because so many times I just watched down to sit and be scared because this movie really freaked me out as a kid, and throughout my teens and everything. But this time watching it, just we're always Gale Weathers is such a fucking vulture and is always gunning for putting herself forward and to platform herself upon the dead bodies of these people who are being murdered. And then all of that's really wrapped up, and I never realized this. The very ending shot, after they've all been fucking murdered in that house and brutalized, Gale included, is her setting up the shot saying, get this right, this is my big moment. The ending takeaway is that media has blood and it's gotta fucking churn it, put it into the machine. And I never fully appreciated that, and I was like, damn, that's pretty badass, because this film can just be seen as a slasher thing on the surface of it, but it is more than that. Now, is it as deep as kind of my assessment is telescoping? I don't know, but all the elements are there.
I think it is that deep, and I think that's why the most recent entries into the franchise don't work as well, because they don't hit on a theme as major as the one you're talking about. And I think people think of Scream as mostly commenting on the horror genre itself, and the famous "these are the rules," etc. But I think you're correct, and that point hit even harder in the script, because I think there's a line that may not be in the film where she says something like, "I want a close up." It was just very clearly Gale's ending, and I think the last 5 and 6 haven't found what what that central theme is to investigate, to anchor those entries into anything really that deep culturally. They got distracted by the like, oh, well, let's have a villain be a film bro, or let's have a villain be, I mean, it never really resonated the way this first one does. And I think it is because of like a thematic detachment in these later entries.
The films have become more about the main focus does seem to be more of like, who's Ghostface in this one? Like, how can we bury the twist so deeply that you don't see it coming, but the person's been there all along, like in the first one. But that's the sole focus, you kind of lose sight of what really made this film special in the first place.
Yeah.
See, this is why, once again, I love doing this, because my score was 7.5, which is actually pretty. Colin's giving that face because that's actually pretty high considering this is not a movie, not a genre. I would just be like, I'm in the mood for Scream. Like, that doesn't happen. So now, but again, it's not shade. It's just literally like in any way. I still enjoyed it when I watched it. It's just, it's not the thing that I have the visceral response to. But I could tell that there were aspects of it that it felt like they were dipping toes in a lot of pies, and I respected that. And I felt like the movie had more tone than the script. And I think that had a lot to do with the way it was shot. Like, right out the gate, the way those opening shots of Drew Barrymore and like the kind of weird, it kind of churns your stomach. Like, on the page, it just is kind of like, here it is. Whereas like in the film, the way that they choose to work with the angles makes you already go, even though I read the script, I'm going like, something's not like something I don't like is going to happen that I did not feel in the script. But even in the movie, like, of course I know that that's going to happen, but I was really immediately taken by like, the direction that was brought to this, it really went a long, long way for me, that I enjoyed it more. And I think the only reason it was still like on the lower end is that I felt like they bit off a lot. It was ambitious in a lot of ways. And obviously, for the sake of the masses, it worked. I think there were certain aspects that I felt like and then again, I guess you could kind of praise this too. To me, it's almost like they bring your attention to a lot, but then they kind of leave it. Like, they're not like, they're like, hey, we want you to notice this, but we're not going to actually tell you, we're not going to really make a meal out of anything, but we're going to have an awareness around these things. And I felt like one of the things that really was making me like spiral a little bit is that I was kind of bouncing back and forth between feeling like the acting was both so mid, like so much of the performance felt like, but then there were other moments, like the actor who played Billy, he was so fucking weird that like he was the perfect casting for it because he was so weird. And the way he chose to like act every line of dialogue and every scene was so weird that it actually threw you off more to go like, maybe he didn't do it because he's just fucking weird. So then on that end, I was like, I don't know that it's like incredible acting, but he just either that dude is weird or he's really good at playing it weird. But like I bounced, and then like even like Rose McGowan, like I was like, there were moments where I was like, she was like that, like whatever best friend, but then there are other moments where I was like, that line delivery makes me feel crazy. Like, and so it was like, it was again, like I'm such Colin knows I am a dialogue girly through and through, both like script and film. And there were times that I felt like they could bring life to the dialogue through performance. Like, Matthew Lillard in particular, I just felt like he always brought the best out of every line he had. He made it interesting. He made it believable. He worked it. Whereas I felt like a lot of the other, also hate to say it, but the parents in this film, I feel like, are they the parents of the people in it that just, they were like, hey, we're going to throw them a bone and let them beat it. It felt like none of them knew how to act.
Every time I picture Sydney's father, I cannot picture the actor. He's such like a I feel bad, but
like,
well, the parents might as well just not be there. Like, we need to live in a special world where teenagers go to school and everything, but there's no parents because like,
it's giving
we're always
nothing.
justifying why the parents aren't there.
It's giving, and also like her dad, like I was like, once again, I get why we can't do a deeper dive on like how the dad is coping, but we quite literally give 0.5 to the dad. Like, we don't even give
Yeah.
1% to the dad. And I think, you know what, Andrew, this is interesting. I'm wondering if us not seeing anything of the mom, everything is just like, well, what happened to your mom, or you were, and not seeing in any way the effect it's had on the dad at all, other than him going, I heard you
Yeah.
scream. I thought I heard you scream. Like, that's all we get
Right.
until the end when he has tape over his mouth. That it's like, we don't really see her mourning. We see her look at a photo of her mom once after she saw it on the TV, and then it's like she looks at a photo of her mom. But because we can't, this world is a world where we're not doubled over sobbing about what's going on. We're never getting the emotional in for her family, for her mother, or her dad. And it's like that, I think, I am such an emotional in person. I am an emotional junkie. I give it to me. I need to know why I care. And then, baby, I care. That I do think if I had to narrow down, the biggest thing that took me out of the film was that I didn't feel like I had the emotional in, that if I had it, it would have been like a 9 or a 10 for me, because it is an interesting story. It's just that was really like hard for me to feel that disconnected to the family that went through arguably the worst thing you could go through less than a year ago, or like about a year ago.
It's almost, and again, this is maybe a bad note, but it's as simple as, do you open on the funeral of the mom, or do you open on after the funeral of Sydney and her dad, at least crying together? Just the fact that we don't live through any of that with them is hard. But before I forget, the opening sequence, as you were talking about it and saying that clearly Wes Craven did something with it that wasn't on the page. I was looking through the script as you were talking, because I think I'm right that the popcorn doesn't burn in the script.
Yeah.
And so that decision alone, adds that kind of
extra
ticking to that stress. The house is also now filling with smoke. And
but also a sense of hope, because I was like, ooh, maybe that'll set off the fire alarm, then the fire department will come.
Yeah, it's this active element that could do something in one way or the other. And to your point about the performances, that's also something, not to use this just to trash the latest entries in the franchise, but I think it's worth talking about that. I don't see a lot of real personalities pushing through in modern casting decisions. And, I like Jenna Ortega. I like Melissa Barrera. I like some of the people in those films, but they don't feel like their personality is allowed to push through. You got somebody like Lillard with his tongue out half the movie. Like that's what 90s casting used to be, and Skeet. Yeah. You're like, what the fuck did this guy come from? I mean, and that just doesn't exist in many films, but definitely not in horror, and definitely not in the Scream movies. Everyone's a little safe. Everyone's pretty cleaned up. Everyone's, they what do they call it? Like iPhone face. Everyone's seen an iPhone before. In the 90s, it was like, should you even be an actor? Like Jamie Kennedy, you're crazy looking, but he's so good. And we don't have that anymore in the Scream franchise.
There was a quirkiness to there was kind of a quirkiness specifically to all the men, even Billy. Billy's weird. Like he's like hot,
especially because he's described as like quarterback meets class president. And I was like, but then you cast the craziest dude. He's so hot. But he isn't like safe.
No, and not jockey, not the least bit jockey. He's almost more like drama school, to be honest. Like he's more like that, like brooding, like whatever, like you're in 3 different plays this year. Like, that's really interesting. That's what I mean, though, is like it was a weird thing of going like, I wasn't blown away by the performances, and yet the people they cast brought something to it. It wasn't that their like acting was like, oh my God, incredible. But it was like literally the people that they hired. There was just something slightly offbeat that they brought to it that like added to this kind of like slightly strange world that we were living in that did make it work. That now I'm wondering, like, if we had a little bit more of an emotional in, and those same people were still the players, if that maybe would have like landed some things a little bit differently. But yeah, that's a very interesting point.
Yeah. Oh, and real quick, in Kevin Williamson's defense, I was shocked to see that. I really thought it would be scripted. The opening sequence would be scripted in a very basic way of, maybe exterior large suburban home. We get the scene set before we move in, but the script opens on the close-up of the phone, and so does the film. And I thought that was interesting that he baked that in, the idea that we start really close. We don't really get outside. We kind of go close, wide, wider, wider until, then we're in the yard, and now we see the house and the parents coming up. So I did think that was an interesting structure that was already in the script. But I agree with you that it wasn't nearly scripted to be as tense as Wes Craven shot it. There's like the blocking and the choreography of the camera moving through that space with her as she's, increasingly becoming more and more manic. It really, I clearly was directed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. Should we get into some script
Let's
notes?
do it. Let's do it.
My first script note is on page 5. Does anyone have anything sooner? Okay.
Only what I just said, which is that I it's a good note. The idea that the structure of that was kind of baked in. That's all I have early on.
I on page 5 I said I liked how he used perfectly placed dialogue to effectively bring about like a revelation of exposition. So it's when she's on the phone talking with the killer, and this whole time she thinks she's just talking with either some creep or some person who's being like, just like flirty with her or whatever. She's not taking it seriously until you get the line of dialogue where she says, "Why do you want to know my name?" And he says, "Because I want to know who I'm looking at." Oof. And in that moment, that's such a great exposition reveal because, yes, this is a creep, but now like you're being watched. Like it sets the whole like atmosphere of like, oh shit, I wasn't on edge and now I should be.
Yes.
And now like things are going to keep ramping up from here. And that was a really good usage of like exposition.
And they've looked for lines like that in the other entries, and it's never as clean and as effective as what you're pointing out. I forget which entry, but there's one where, he says something like, "Now you're wearing red," or something, because he's and I was like, not as cool as I want to know who I'm talking to. I want to know who I'm looking at,
It's true. It's simple, but so effective.
So good.
So icky.
Absolute ickus.
And then like the pages 1 through 18, I'm kind of encroaching upon a daddy do of mine, but page 1 through 18 has really fun formatting, I thought, because he utilized white, like negative space on the page to kind of draw your eye to give you like to like let the scene play out in your mind's eye in the structure that he really wanted to. Now, I thought that was going to play throughout the rest of the script. He kind of goes away from that after that first sequence, and it's a bit more like blocky action, which doesn't actually hold it back. Like the pace is still pretty quick with the script, even though there is a lot of action, especially towards the end. But I really liked how he utilized formatting to hone the exposition delivery. And I wrote this little excerpt down. It's on page 9. And this is what it says. It says, "Casey, terrified, forces herself to move, staggering to the kitchen. The glass doors. Her shaky hand finds the light switch. She hits it. The backyard is lit. Sitting in a long chair in the middle of the backyard is a big linebacker of a guy, her boyfriend, Steve, tied and gagged. He's been roughed up, but he's alive, close on his eyes, wide in fear, staring at his girlfriend, pleading with her." And the way that it's formatted is, instead of using periods, he uses a lot of ellipses in between. It says, "Casey, terrified, forces herself to move," ellipses, "staggering to the kitchen," ellipses. So you kind of like, it's kind of this like lingering feeling when you're reading it, just from the nature of like the grammar being used, like the ellipses. But then to really punch home what you're seeing, he will put characters' names on like a single line of their own with nothing else. Like when it says, "Sitting in a lawn chair in the middle of the backyard is a big linebacker of a guy, her boyfriend, ... And then there's a new line that says Steve. Then after that, he tells you what is happening to Steve. And he does that throughout the script. And I thought that was really fun, because it kind of puts you in the mindset of, we talked about this in a former episode this season, where horror movies especially can really, really effectively utilize formatting to kind of give you a sense of these revelations and make it more of like a surprise instead of just like you're reading a paragraph. I thought that was fun, but he does kind of stray away from that for the rest of it.
Yeah. It almost feels like he took a long time to write the first 18 pages, and then everything else was such a breeze. Maybe just because it becomes so much more dialogue heavy at times.
Yeah.
But these first 18 pages are really kind of
There's
a
real
master
atmosphere
class in that. Yeah.
It's very well done. I really like that beginning part. My next one's on page 15, and it's the ghost face reveal. I was always curious to see like if that mask was like what they envisioned like on the page. And this is what it says. It says, she moves further along the house, squeezing by hedges to the third window. She peeks in to see the figure staring back at her, his face covered with a ghostly white mask inches from her, his eyes piercing through, soulless. Casey screams bloody murder as a hand crashes through the glass of the window, grabbing her hold of her neck. She beats it in with her free hand. But ghostly white mask is like all it really says. I think it says like that the features are distorted, but very much leaves it up to the reader to kind of fill in what that's going to look like for them, which I think can also work where it's like you give them enough direction, but then it's like someone's like psyche's going to kind of play it out in their mind about what's going to be most fearful for them, which I think is also a fun thing to play around with in horror scripts.
Did you guys
for the reader? Did
you guys feel like I felt like it went, although it was very thought out, I felt like it went from being like pretty clear, and I couldn't just tell if it was like a slight exhaustion from following so much brutal action that like the way specifically in the film when you see Drew Barrymore when she's like and she's literally like looking at her parents and are like, help me, and like they can't hear and they're moving, that like I had like a general gist idea, but by the time I had reached that action from that sequence, I was a little bit like, where the fuck? Like, what, like it, and again, it's not even like his fault.
Just the geography of it all?
Just the geography got a little in the weeds for me. And it's not because it wasn't like, I do think he did his best attempt at being clear, but it was definitely a lot more powerful and easy to conceptualize, watching it. But like, it really was, because there was a part of me that was like, the way they were talking about the windows and then like how she'd have to go through and then that isn't exactly, it wasn't shot the exact way it was written, although it was quite similar, but it got a little in the weeds for me where I started going like, wait, is she in the house or is she out the house now? And then like her parents are right there, but why wouldn't her parents see her? Whereas I feel like the direction was very clear and very easy to follow and heartbreaking because you're like, literally her parents are right there, and it's totally simple. It makes total sense. And whereas that impact wasn't there for me on the page, because by that point, by page 18, I'm like, where are we?
I come across this a lot in that like so much of action comes down to, especially like in indie filmmaking, location. And so sometimes when I'm writing, I'm like, well, a fight happens. Well, what kind of fight? Well, we'll know when we find the location and then I'll write for it. But obviously you can't do that, especially, at a studio level. But I did find it interesting because I know the way I read the script, and I don't know if you all would read, but I read a scene, then watched a scene, then read a scene and watched a scene. And I did it like that. So it was like interwoven, which was kind of trippy because sometimes I'd press play and I'd be like, I watched it. No, I read it. I haven't watched it. And so it also, the only problem is it starts to blur the lines a little. But so I kind of couldn't get confused on the geography of that opening sequence.
Okay.
Just because like I was kind of picturing it from the film. And then once I pressed play, I was like, yeah, that's how it all plays out. But I will say, this is such like a rat's nest of a point, but I found him to be more descriptive than I expected, as far as him on the page saying there are 3 windows that are uncurtained.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there was something in his head. There was a house, there was a room.
That's
and
that's true.
And then to your point, Colin, what mask was in his head, I always wondered, because I think people at the time reading this might have just pictured Michael Myers because they talk about Michael Myers so much.
Wait, that's a good point.
And so I always was curious, on the page, did it imply it was almost a Michael Myers-y thing? But they do specifically say ghost. So he had something in his head. And I don't know, was there already at the time a standardized kind of, ghost mask? But, Tatum at some point, I think it's Tatum, calls him Casper. I thought, like, did he picture almost like an old I forget the name of the company, Ben something Halloween masks, and it was like an old Casper mask.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I was very curious about all the same things. Is my point.
You make a good point though about it's not. That's what I mean though. Is it wasn't that it was very clear reading it. He knew what he was picturing.
Yeah,
I just was struggling
I
a
couldn't
little
see
bit.
the space.
But you're absolutely right. It was not that. It was very obvious that he knew exactly what he was picturing. I just was struggling a little bit with it, but then it was so clear in the film.
But that's so valid because I'll write a kind of horror action set piece and I'll get a note that's like, so wait a minute, they run out of the hallway, but they're right at the thing when they're done. Yeah, because the hallway is going to be, it's so hard to communicate that stuff.
And truthfully, like I do consulting with a lot of screenwriters, and that is literally one of my favorite things is going like, I know this is in your head, but let's make sure it's on the page, because it is like, I mean, when you do so many revisions and so many drafts, you're like, no, it's on the page. It's on the page. And then someone else comes in, they're like, I'm sorry, are we floating in space? Like, what's happening?
This is a tangent, but that is the hardest thing with rewriting is that it's all in your head, but it might have been from draft 2 and you're on draft 9 and someone says, so why did so-and-so say this? I'm like, well, they said it. Oh, to that point, this is way getting ahead. But, am I correct that they cut the entire conversation about I have to think about 8 is enough when I have sex with Stu?
Yes.
And then she says something about men only caring about boobs. Mm-hmm. And then there is a callback to that.
There is when they're at the house party and she's like, see tits.
Yeah, exactly.
But we don't see that conversation.
And I was like, oh, so interesting. Because I was looking for the connective tissue that was still remaining from something that had been removed, which we can get into. Because there's one scene in particular later that I was like, oh, that scene's gone. And is there any remnant of it? But we can get there eventually.
They did.
I had something really small on 16 that was, I had also highlighted the description of the ghost face mask because had been looking for it. But I don't know why this stood out so strongly to me, but the fact that these 2 lines are scripted from the father and mother, that fish smelled strong. Well, I told you to send it back. Yes. When I saw that in the movie, I was like, they told those actors to improvise something about dinner and gave them nothing. And that's what they said. No, those are scripted lines. I couldn't believe it. And maybe it's a good thing. I mean, it's very idiosyncratic,
I think the desired impact of that was that like they're talking about something so
benign,
totally.
But like their daughter's being brutally murdered just behind them. But like when I saw that on the page, I was like, interesting.
I'm sorry. What? Yeah, same. It read so comedic, and I don't really know if that was the intention, but it did read quite comedic because you were like, this is the one-liner we're pulling.
Right. I know. And it is so hard to give lines to. There is a fine line between letting something kind of fall into the background, but then that being distracting. Because they're just walking up and humming as they get to the door. They would be saying something. It's so hard to make that stuff
believable. They're just scatting. They're like,
doobity-da-ba-ba. Yeah, they're just like, walking up to the door. Yeah. But then to give them something so specific is a different kind of distracting.
We love our daughter. Ba-ba-dee-ba-da-ba-da.
Yeah. I hope she's okay.
That's actually a really good point. To give them something so specific is actually a different kind of distracting.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Like to have like, that's a kind of fine line there where, cause like you said, they got to be talking about something to lead up to it. But I'm wondering if in a way it may have been a little bit more effective to kind of just say in the action, like the parents are talking about their meal and and like not give anything specific. Cause that's true. Cause it did take me out of like, the flow of energy, like of this scene, like that we're leading up to
totally.
Death.
Although to be fair, if we are treating a script like a document in which you shoot from, which it is, it technically worked in that it takes you out when you're reading it, which also matters. That's why this is also layered.
Yeah.
True.
It does matter how you perceive it when you read it. But what's weird is they verbatim did it in the film and it works in the film and does not take you out. So there is, but again, that's the complexity of it because your read matters and we all are agreeing it came off comedic and bizarre in a way that it does not come off in the film. I completely forgot that they were even talking at the beginning when they come in because you're so like you're so preoccupied with what's going on with Casey.
And I would imagine that would have been a hard thing to defend. You know, when you write, it gets to the point you have to defend every line at some point. And I imagine at some point someone was like, I don't know, she's getting murdered. And then I was like, the fish, can we take out that stuff with the... And at some point, I guess Kevin had to say, no, it'll work in the edit because it's going to kind of like break through the tension.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you win all those battles, but it does feel like with this script, he must have won a lot of the battles.
Absolutely.
There's so much interesting thing, quirk in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the film it's pretty verbatim of what's like from script to screen. There's like only like a handful of scenes that were taken out, and they were very unnecessary. But like it is surprising to see, like, because this is like one of the early drafts when it's still titled Scary Movie. So like I thought there was going to be more of a difference, honestly.
Does anyone know? I don't. Does anyone know why the name change?
Yes,
and
I do.
Idea it was?
I do.
Okay.
Give it.
It was originally titled Scary Movie, but Harvey and Bob Weinstein didn't like it and suggested Scream instead. They had just seen the music video for Michael and Janet Jackson's duet of the same name, and they loved its simplicity.
That's it. That's hilarious to me that it was because of that song that
but
the most expensive music video of all time or something.
Does it also not show you once again the things you can never plan for, cocktail of things that have to come together to make something to work? Because because also then Scary Movie, that franchise, that whole thing is its own thing that Scream does feel like a better title for this film. Like Scary Movie would have
evocative.
Absolutely.
Tonally
a lot more.
There's a line of dialogue in there somewhere, I forget from who, where they say the word scream or screaming, where I almost thought, and this can't be the case, because it almost felt like they were saying it because the movie was called Scream, but it wasn't at that time.
No.
But there was like an iconic line at some point, and I'll find it. But yes, obviously, I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but Scream is so much more iconic.
So much more iconic.
It is very iconic, especially for a franchisable like movie. It really hits nicely. Page 18 and 19, we talked about this a little bit ago, but I wrote down Sydney and Billy's character descriptions because the character descriptions are quite well done.
They're quite well done.
The script. In Sydney, this is how Sydney is described. As Sydney Prescott, a young girl of 17, sits, her face glued to the computer monitor in front of her, close on her face, sharp and clever with deep, lonely eyes. She's comfortable in a plain flannel nightgown. She's just a simple girl.
She's just a simple little girly who is both mourning and not mourning her mother.
Maybe a cardigan.
And when Billy comes in,
not mourning.
When Billy comes in, that's what you wear to bed. I'm like, yeah, bitch, she's in high school, you weirdo. No, she's wearing a silk cami and a thong short. Like, what are you talking about, Billy?
Also, in the script, when she flashes him, like in
the
the
left
script,
breast,
they wanted to we would have fully seen boobs.
Yeah.
She's 17.
And but also the specificity of her left breast, I spiraled. I was like, what are you talking about?
And in the sex scene later in the script, it was like rush in on breasts, and I was like, but then it says Billy, obscures her. But I was like, I think they were planning on nudity, and then he obscures.
No, let's be very real.
Yeah.
For the listeners who have not read the script, this script is a lot more salacious. It just is. It's a lot more what you would expect.
There's a lot more wiener talk and
way more wiener talk, and always referring to it as a wiener.
Yeah, a lot of
Except
wiener.
Except for when she says you can pause it and see Tom Cruise's penis.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a wiener.
They still keep like that the sexual undertone, like, for sure. That is still very much in the film, but it is diluted immensely from the script. The script definitely is a lot more heavy-handed, and it definitely read as though they imagined this was a film that would have nudity for sure. Like this you guys, this sex scene in the film is about as benign. I feel like I've seen like spicier things from strangers walking down a street. Like, it was so, and again, I know you weren't meant to, like, I don't think that was supposed to be like, oh, they were supposed to be having incredible sex. That wasn't even in the script. But that being said, the script definitely made it seem like that was going to be a moment that was more of a moment. Whereas the movie, it was like, when she says, or a Meg Ryan movie or a porno, and he's like, what?
What?
He literally turns into Scooby-Doo. He's like, oh, what?
It's true. Yeah, it's true. But you're right. When I was reading the script, I was like, whoa,
It's
this is a
horny little, yeah, it's a horny script.
But in the movie, it's just, nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, the script even describes their like post-coital
Yes.
state and every, you know.
Whereas,
Mhm.
by the
Yeah.
way,
Awkward
by the way,
post-sex
in
moment.
the movie,
Mhm.
why is Billy on the floor and she's up on the bed? I literally was like, what just happened? And he's like, are you okay? And I was like, why are you sitting on the
Right.
floor? She's on the bed and you're asking if she's okay. I am terrified about what just happened between the two of
Yeah.
you.
It's one of those instances where showing less made it worse because we don't know what happened. So now we're like, whoa. Whereas if they had just showed it, I'd be like, okay, so that's what now I know why he's on the floor. But instead we fill in the gaps with something.
Also, like, for the
Crazy.
sake of Sydney, not that I wanted her to have bad sex, but I wanted to just further the point that, like, Billy is an absolute and utter turd, that I really would have
Yeah.
loved that this whole time we're making such a meal out of the fact that she's being selfish because she won't have
Yeah.
sex with him. Despite the very direct trauma she has. And also, by the way, I don't know, maybe a little intuition because the same man who's trying to
For sure.
convince her to have sex raped and killed her mother. But, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. But the fact that, like, I wish we could have seen him, like, suck, like, be so
Yeah.
bad, like, just be like, and it was done. Like, that would have been, like, that would have been, like,
Or-
so delicious to me.
Or she is finally consenting and he can't get it up.
Oh,
You
gorgeous.
know, like, that
Even
could be-
better.
You know, that could be interesting because he's also got a lot going on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it would have been interesting to do something with that. I guess they kind of eventually make the point that, like, well, Randy's the virgin in this scenario now or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, it didn't check any boxes
No.
that helped anything thematically.
And then in the script, they did try and give Sydney a moment where she kind of gets, well, I mean, obviously she ends up killing Billy and getting the upper hand there. But then in the script, the last thing she says to him for dying, like, she shoots Stu being like, that's for my mother. And then she turns to Billy laying on the ground about to die and she says, and this is for having a tiny wiener. And then, like,
Yeah.
shoots him in the forehead. Like,
And you're like,
Yeah.
babe,
not the flex you
you're
thought
like,
was gonna
babe,
be.
I can think of 25 other things that we should
Yeah.
call him out for, and the tiny wiener being the least suspicious.
Right.
Very funny.
And it weirdly, to not that I can speak for Sydney and her trauma, but what you just said is like that weirdly undercuts
Yes!
the severity of
Yes.
what he's done.
But the whole
I don't know that
film undercuts it. That's why it's like,
Yeah.
I guess it's in line with it, because I will say in the film, wait, I have to find it because I don't remember if the dialogue was the exact same, but where, wait. Okay. Tatum. We have to talk about Tatum for 2
Mhm.
seconds.
Mm,
Tatum is a
mhm.
shit friend pretending to be a good friend. I'm over Tatum's shit. She is
Yep.
not a good friend. That is not a sister. That's not the sisterhood. That's not girlhood. That is a shitty half-ass friend pretending to be
Yep.
otherwise. When Tatum pressures Sydney into the house party and she looks at her, by the way, not even a full 24 hours before someone tried to murder her and we don't know who did. We're coming up on the anniversary of her mother being raped and murdered. Someone tried to kill her in her home. And now her best friend, Tatum, who she's known since childhood, goes, come on, Sid, for me.
Yeah.
When Sydney isn't sure if she wants to have a house party, I screamed, you guys. The scream I screamed.
Yeah.
I was like, that is not a friend. That is a person who hates you. Like,
Yeah.
but also the insanity of that line. Come on, Sid, for me. Why are we worried about Tatum?
Do you think, I agree wholeheartedly. Two things. When I'm told, as I'm working on a horror script, if I'm told to make it more like Scream, a lot of times what they mean is we want a central shittier friends. A lot of times what they mean is we want a central character whose friend group is getting picked off because they want to care about the victims need to have a relationship to our lead.
Yeah.
So when Scream was brought up, I said exactly this in a creative meeting the other month. I was like, so wait, who are we care about Tatum? They're practically frenemies. It's clear that Tatum, I even think, like, were they trying to make us think Tatum could be the killer because she's so kind of not abuses Sydney, but is very like not sensitive. She's callous.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like the next person to die is Kenny. So I don't even know why Scream. I know why it's such a thing to point to because of its success. But when you actually look at it, the only person, the most important person that died a year ago. The next person to die is the girl that sits next to her in English class. Then it's Tatum, who's an asshole, and then it's Kenny, and then it's just the actual murderer.
Which also
so
justice
it's not a
for
good
Kenny.
Example.
Also justice for Kenny. When Gail's like 50 pounds overweight, I'm like, is the extra 50 pounds in the room with us? Because that man is not 50 pounds overweight.
I was watching that and I was like, well, I'd be cast as Kenny. So what does that mean now? But so it's weirdly not a great example.
No.
I did too. It's not a great example of a friend group getting picked off. When you really look at it, there's a lot of other things going on.
Agreed. And you know what, Andrew? It's like the other thing is too, I think you're giving them too much credit, but now I wish they would have done it with Tatum. They could have very easily have made it Tatum someone that you're going, ooh, is it
a
her?
red herring.
I don't think that was it at all. I just think that they wrote her as like a pretend good friend. Like but that to me, I'm actually like frustrated now because I'm like, that is a missed opportunity. It would have been more interesting and they could have done it very, very subtly and easily to give you a couple moments.
A little turn of the knob. Yeah.
But instead she's just a shit friend. Like when she's like, okay, from here on out, like when you pee, I pee. And then like 5 seconds later, they're at the house party and she's like, I'm going to go in the other room and get beers. And then and you're like, when you pee, I pee. What? Like,
yeah. It's wild.
Like, have you seen Tatum? And you're like, yeah, she doesn't like you, Sydney.
Yeah.
It's weird to even think
for high school.
Yeah. Yes. It's weird to even think of them as best friends because they don't feel like, I don't feel the emotional loss of her losing a best friend.
How about when she's spending the night at Tatum's and by the way, the 2 twin beds in that room makes 0 sense. 0 sense. That also.
And Tatum's like 2 hours to get to her to pick her up that night. She's like, sorry, practice ran late.
Yeah. Tatum, officially Tatum sucks. Like, I'm going to make Tatum suck shirts. Yeah. But that she's like sitting there and she's like, so you really think it was Billy? So again, what we're insinuating here is that your best friend is going, you think that your boyfriend that you've been with for 2 years tried to kill you last night. And she's like, yeah, he was there. And she goes, well, I knew he had to have a flaw. Now again,
he's a murderer.
Now again,
thanks,
this
Tatum.
could argue. I know that this is probably part of the appeal of the film because it's like bizarre and it's weird, but it does like live in a strange space where it's like not comedy and it's not real. It's like a weird middle and it's not satire. It's like this weird adjacent to reality thing that I do think ultimately if you fucking love this film, you're probably pretty down with it. But it's just like moments like that where I was like, I almost wish it would have been a little bit funnier or it would have been a little bit more real because it just was so often these moments lived in an in-between for me where it was like emotionally I had nowhere to land because I wanted to like laugh and be like he had to have a flaw and you're talking about him trying to kill you.
It almost feels like in the first Scream it wouldn't blow my mind if we were to just pull out and it be a set and it be, which is what it is in Scream 3. It's almost, I don't think the movie is this aware, but it does it operates in this weird kind of theatrical space.
Yes.
That you could easily then just cut to we're watching. I mean, they always play with that in the later films. We cut to we're watching that. No, now we're watching this. Now we're watching that. But even this first one has that energy
and I
what
like
reality
that.
are we
I
in?
like that about it because there are times where they're being so on the nose and you feel the purpose behind that, you feel the vehicle behind that, you feel like okay, there is the relevance of this, but then that's what makes some of the other moments where you're like the pendulum is right directly in the middle right now.
Right totally.
The last thing I'm gonna scream about, and then we can move on, is this scene made me fucking spiral on the page, and it made me fucking spiral in the film when Sydney sees Billy for the first time at the school after he's out of jail, and he is confronting her about not sleeping with him. And he's all like, "You haven't been the same since ... And then and now granted, we give Sid a little, I mean, Sid has a little, like a weenie bit of a backbone. She's like, yeah, since my mom, like she's giving it a little bit, But like,
Yeah.
I was like, the insanity of this scene is making me crazy. Like the fact that this is the timing we're having this conversation where he's like, I just want my girlfriend back and after all of this, like what? What do you mean?
I will say there is, not to get like too deep, but there is something. I wonder if it came from a real place for Kevin Williamson, because there is something to people who have experienced tragedy or loss or trauma, and people. Well, the thing is, though, Billy technically has. He's just masking it. Well, I was going to say, sometimes I wonder, are they playing with the idea that when someone's gone through something that maybe their friend group hasn't, the people around you sometimes do get to a place where they're like, are we back to normal now?
No, I totally agree. The
victim is like, no, we're not back to the normal.
No, that is spot on. The reason it made me spiral was because someone tried to murder her the night before. That you're going,
right.
That it's like, ignore the mom. Like, ignore the mom thing completely.
Right.
You're like, and also, it was him, by the way, which makes it even more insane. But
it's
you're
like the ultimate gaslighting moment.
The absolute gaslighting moment. Like, ladies and gentlemen, we throw that term around, but Scream is literally gaslighting 101.
Like,
but I'm
actually,
like,
truly.
Can you, the fact that we're supposed to be living in a space where her boyfriend, who's out of jail, is choosing right now, the first time he sees her after someone tried to kill her, he's just going to be like, I don't know, man, like, kind of a buzzkill that we can't fuck. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that absolutely the commentary of like your friends move on way quicker than you do from like a real, for sure. But it was, and that I would have been fine with, but it was the fact that the night previous, and then this poor girl goes to the bathroom and someone tries to fucking kill her again. Like, it's like she can't, and everyone's just kind of like, oh, that sucks, Sid. Anyway, at this house party, do this for me, bitch. And you're like, what?
Yeah. I know there was no one that was truly at Sydney's side. I mean, I guess what's nice is over the course of the franchise, and I know we're not there yet, but there's the moment in the script that made me realize he had a plan was, it says, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, that this moment doesn't really feel like it's in the movie. Sydney sits up as Gail moves toward her, helping her. Their eyes meet, a life truce. And this is like page 117, so I'm jumping way ahead. But reading that, I was like, oh, so he knows now that like it's Sydney and Gail forever, which I thought was cool that he had that insight, because that is what it became whenever we do get Sydney and Gail at the same time. I guess Gail and Sydney become the real best friends that Tatum and her were not. But in this one, she doesn't have that, true like compatriot. Yeah.
No, even Tatum's mom is like, oh, honey, there's someone on the phone for you. Is it my dad? Yeah. No. And you're like, and then you just like hand it to her and it's like the murderer. And then you're just like, I'm like, no one is looking out for you, sweet girl. I can't.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. You're just along for the ride.
Girl.
Scream's more of a vibe. It's a general vibe. don't pull the strings.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop pulling. My next page note was just the character descriptions on page 26. It's exterior school courtyard. It was so good. It's students. It's so good. Students sit at an outdoor table eating lunch. Crowded at one table is the gang. This consists of Sydney and Billy and Tatum. Next to Tatum sits her boyfriend Stuart with his arm draped across her back. He's a Billy wannabe, almost the jock, almost handsome, almost cool. He tries way too hard. Across the table is the fifth wheel, Randy, a tall and gangly kid with no such Billy-like aspirations, a witty jokester who elevates geek to coolness. Girl.
When I read those, I could see like Jamie Kennedy reading that description and as an actor being like, that's fucking me, man. That's me. You know, the way actors get when they're like, I was meant for this role.
Literally.
And I know we've already talked about the fact that Lillard wasn't even aware of, I guess, the project, but Lillard too. I'm sure when he read that, he was like, "Oh man, I can do that. I can do that
to a T. It's them to a T.
Yeah.
It's kind of spooky.
It is. I have a question for both of you. Something that I struggle with is, I have a pretty hard rule, as I think most screenwriters would, that you can't just say what's going on in somebody's head. You know, it has to be in their dialogue or in their action. You can't just say she looks at this thing. She's so scared. It makes her think about the time when she, that's a hard no, right? But when it comes to character description, sometimes it's so fulfilling, and I know they're two different things, but I always wonder what's the leeway to say something like he's a Billy wannabe, you know? And we don't know that yet. We don't know it through his dialogue or through his action or the relationship dynamic. But that being on the page does inform how I then perceive the character. It also, I'm sure, informed the actor. And so it's just such a balance of you've got to be able to say enough, because not everything can just be organically shown through action and dialogue. But I just wondered where you fall on that. I mean, these do feel like the perfect mix of giving us just enough to then get us kind of off to the races. But sometimes I wonder if it's a little bit of a cheat to say, here's what he's like. He's like this, trust me. And then just, move on. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, we've talked about this in previous episodes, actually, where, because there are certain scripts, like first season we did As Above, So Below. And there's character descriptions in that where they go on and on about who this person, like the one in particular, like he would be this if he was in the French Revolution, and like this kind of person he'd be. And none of that is anything that you can see. But I think in something like this, where it's saying like he's a Billy wannabe, I think that's coming across more of as a character trait, and it's giving you the general like energy that this guy brings. Like to me, that telescopes like he's always going to be eager to like get approval from Billy himself or whatever. He's always going to be
the yippy dog next to the big kind of cool dog that's always like, yeah, right. Yeah.
Because we've seen it done in scripts that's done really well, where like, because like you're not supposed to say those certain things on the page, but when it is done well, it can inform a character and kind of give you a deeper look into their soul to like see them and like emotionally connect with them more so. I don't think it quite does that here, but I do think that was a good little bit of exposition to get about him.
Absolutely. Colin and I talk about this a lot, and I have a pretty strong feeling about it. And this mainly came from after I'd been working with other screenwriters for so long and I was reading so many character descriptions. My general rule is if it informs the performance, then you can keep it.
Right.
But if it feels, if I'm reading it and it feels unearned and there's no way like if only the reader could know, like saying like a Billy wannabe informs performance, that an actor can literally go, oh, I know how I'm going to play it now. So that can be captured on screen. Whereas like he looks at Billy and thinks about that's unearned. So my big thing is like, if I'm reading it and it feels unearned and there's no way it can be shot, then it's out. That's how I feel about it. Like I think there's wiggle room. There's always wiggle room. I've definitely read many a character description where they definitely give you a little bit more than what's earned, but you're also like, but you know what? It's kind of helping me perceive this person go in, but it's such a fine line for me that I always think if it can inform performance, gorgeous, use it. But if you're just telling me something about their life story that I have not earned and there's no way I could know as a viewer, then I don't think you can use it.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's a good way to look at it.
We're also huge. You have to give a physical description to your characters. Nothing makes me spiral more than when people are like, Tim, and not Naya brown hair, Naya jeans on. Especially when you're dealing with ensembles and you're like, I'm supposed to be keeping track of 20 different characters who have not one physical description, then I can't see the movie in my head. It's gone. It's whatever. So that I'm like staunch about. After that, I'm just like, does it inform performance? But that's my.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to think about it, because looking at this description, I can see all of this being manifested in the performance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Page 35. I love the jump scare that they have when Sydney's on. It's when the killer first calls Sydney and he's like, I'm on your front porch and everything, when Tatum is being an awful friend and hasn't come picked up her friend who's actively being stalked by a murderer. But I love, like, she goes outside and she's like, oh, you can't see me, whatever. Then we go back inside, then he pops out of the closet. I love that because there's some pretty good jump scares in this. And I think the best thing about a jump scare is when it kind of subverts your expectations, because like the writer like leads you up to expect this one thing and then it's like, actually it's here. I thought that was a pretty well done little moment.
And I think jump scares get bad rap because they're mostly done poorly these days. But yes, that's a it's like I won't say the movie, but there's a jump scare that would be scary in that moment because of the character and what they're living through and where we think their attention is, but where it should be. And that's still, to me, like a very filmmakery thing to investigate. The idea of like just a sound design, moment cranked up to 12 when all that's happening is something really innocuous, that feels more like a cheat. I mean, I know they kind of do that with the cat in the garage with Tatum, but I think there's so many unearned jump scares in modern horror films, whereas a jump scare doesn't have to be a cheap, dumb thing. And I think that's an example of a great jump scare because we're also like with her and our POV is limited as is hers, etc.
I agree. I don't have another page note until like 69. So
yeah,
I just wrote down silly stuff of like I around page 35, 36. It was interesting to already see, even in the 90s, a horror film have to cope with the reality of technology, cell phones, fax machines. And so, I just highlighted the fax modem scene where it's almost like you wish the movie didn't have to have something like that. But I guess it the tech was kind of coming in at that point. So sure, why wouldn't she try to get a fax off real quick?
Her little hidden camera is fun because it's like now it'd be a GoPro, it'd be so easy, but it was fun to see the way they kind of, they make it work and that there's a delay. You wouldn't be able to get away with that now. It would be like, no, there's not a fucking, I mean, well, that being said, tech still sucks, hence many different things.
That's true.
But that being said, it would be it would take you out a little bit. It would feel more of like a plot weakness. Whereas like in this film, it was, you didn't for a second guess that there would be a 30-second delay.
And I think that a lot of the Screams have tried to have fun with technology. Is it the Jenna Ortega opening where it's lock, unlock, locked, unlocked, the secure system, the security system that she's got on her phone. None of them, even just the 30-second delay, is a more fun game than that stuff in the more modern films. I don't know if it's Williamson or Craven, but one of them really understood how to make that fun.
Yeah.
When they did have to involve tech as a obstacle or as a misdirect, it's really fun. Where sometimes it feels like the ideas are reversed. They haven't thought of how to make it fun, but it has to be in the movie because we've got smartphones now.
That's a really good point.
Well, this
maybe don't have the smartphone.
Yeah. In the tech in this directly heightens the suspense because you see them in there and like they realize like Ghostface is behind that guy on the couch and he's coming up with them with a 30-second delay. Like they see the door opening. And so you as the audience knows like they saw Ghostface there, but you don't know where he is now. And it's like, it kind of like puts you on edge. And like, I think when you're using technology like that, it has to be directly pushing it forward or adding a new obstacle or solution that you didn't see before, where I think sometimes it's so often just kind of thrown in there. But we saw the same kind of thing, but done not as effectively with, to bring it back to this again, Carly, Jaws. Like, in the Jaws script.
I thought you were going to say Sixth Sense.
Oh, no. We've talked about the Jaws script a couple of different times because it's just...
It's a tough one.
He sets up the technology on the boat way too much in a way that it doesn't, like, he's telling us technical terms on a boat that should be used later on to show us like, oh, well, that can go wrong. It's like heightening the tension here. But it was a really good little addition. I thought the 30-second delay, it's fun.
We'll be going back to Jaws for forever because Jaws is just that weird example of a script where we did not expect to be like weirded out by the fact that so much of that script is like treating you like you're an expert fisher and you're like,
Interesting. I've never read the script.
Oh, it's not great. It's not great. But honestly, like it doesn't mean it shouldn't be read though, because there is something that is one of the biggest contrasts I think we've done between a script and a film, in the sense that like what Steven Spielberg did with that script, it will make you appreciate the movie so much more, because what he pulled from like the thick, dense web of that script is incredible, to say the least.
Wow.
That's become a reference point for us when it's like when there's scripts that like assume too much of something. Like then the flip side is Black Swan was a script that, while there were flaws there, that script never assumed you understood professional dancers and ballet. They allowed you to like, you were learning as you went in a way that worked. They never were like, oh yeah, you know the world of ballet anyway. You know what I mean? Whereas Jaws was like, you know the world of being a fisherman. And you're like, I don't actually. Teach me. But
that's interesting. And I wonder, this is a different podcast or different episode, but I do wonder, obviously it's Spielberg, but I also wonder how much you can't take the Spielberg out of it, but how much the circumstance forced him to simplify and streamline, and ultimately, but that's still him making sure the right decisions are made, because you can solve a problem the wrong way and you can make the bad decision, but he was so good at, I just watched the 50th anniversary documentary or whatever, at seeing the problems, but solving them in a way that kept the thing good.
He streamlined it. Yeah, he found the heart of it.
Yeah,
the script kind of lacked heart, whereas like Steven Spielberg, what he's best at is like he really found kind of what we're talking about lacks in this film a little bit, but also would be harder to pull off, and it would make the genre slightly, or at least the film, the tone slightly different. But like he gives you the emotional in that you need for that movie to be impactful that is not in the script. It's just not like. It's just not. And so, Steven Spielberg, the man that you are. Steve. You got a real future, kid. Real future.
Page 63, there's a line of dialogue from Gail that I thought was really great, because it's a line of dialogue that reinforces the kind of person that she is, and just kind of shows you like where her orbit in this world is and kind of what her motivations are even more. It's when she's talking to Dewey and she's like, oh, I'm here. And she's like, the line of dialogue says, she goes, I know I should be in New York covering the Sharon Stone stalker, but who knew? Please call me Gail. You look awfully young to be a police officer. But like this idea that she's so flippant about what's going on, and this is truly a means to an end of her stardom here, where she's like, yeah, I should be, covering the Sharon Stone stalker. Like, you don't even take that seriously. But it's just, I love little moments like that. There's not a whole lot of them in this, but I thought that was a really nice moment with Gail, where Gail feels like a character on the page that's way more dialed in than a lot of the other characters. Like she has very much her like motives are there. And I think it really works very well.
And I think that Courtney in many ways was the strongest actor of the bunch, in that that character should have been unlikable, period, until the end, where you all of a sudden, but like I liked her the whole time. Like I literally, even when I was like, she's doing this for herself, I always liked her, when for all intents and purposes I shouldn't have, and I didn't really like her on the page. I was like, what a bitch, like she's but she really brought like a magnetism to that role, where I was like, I'm kind of here for you, like I just kind of want to see what you do.
Even to where when Sydney punches her, I'm like, whoa, come on. Yeah, I was defensive of Gail. I had something right before 63, which is a question for the group. Do you feel like, obviously it's really overt that they maybe want us to think it's the principal, because he says, what I should do is gut your insides or whatever to those kids. I don't even know if upon first watching Scream, I ever thought it was going to be the principal.
Right.
Same.
Do you think it's meant to be a red? Do they think we would be convinced of that? Is that part of casting Henry Winkler? Is it part? Because the problem with a lot of the modern Scream movies are, spoiler alert, but when Dermot Mulroney is just like the random cop dad, I'm like, well, he's Ghostface. Why the fuck is Dermot Mulroney here? Or Dylan McDermott? Which one is it? I forget. I think it's
from
Dermot.
The most recent one I haven't seen. I haven't seen the most recent one yet, so I cannot comment.
Neither have I.
Yeah, a lot of times you can tell by the casting, and so I wondered if were they having fun thinking, why else is Henry Winkler in this small role? Maybe people will think he's the killer, but I don't know if that ever really worked, or if it was even.
I definitely think it was meant to make you have a pause, but that's it.
Yeah.
They didn't,
Yeah. Especially the dialogue. It's a bit heavy-handed in that moment, because he had the scissors. He's kind of threatening him. He even kind of pokes one kid in the chest with the scissors.
It's very weird.
It's weird.
They're wanting to think, could he be the killer? But it's kind of almost in a lazy way, where we didn't really need that.
Right. Right.
But no,
right.
I didn't think about that with the casting. That's very true. If you're gonna like bury the lead even more.
Oh,
maybe don't.
this just made me think.
Absolutely.
I have a question for the group. Are we meant to take that Casey is killed because she broke up with Stu?
I think so.
Because if the motive, I mean, now granted, there was a part of me that was like Billy's only but like Billy's only motive is that like, you know, her mom slept with his dad and then like she left, and I was like, well, hate to be morbid here, but people have killed for far less in this country, so that actually is a valid motive for this character. But then it made me go, if I'm thinking that way, then why kill Casey? Why not just kill Sid? It felt like they. Do you know what I'm saying? Because like that's an odd one too. Like, why wouldn't they just kill Sydney? Why did they kill Casey first? And part of me was like, was it because they're psychos, like they're absolute psychos, but that it's because they have the little dialogue where he's like, oh well, she broke up with Stuart for so and so, and then she's like, I thought you broke up with her for me, and he's like, I did, and it's like that felt like, is that a smart way of being like, yeah, he's pissed that she broke up with him, so he's gonna kill her?
It's really difficult to. It's. To have sorry, I'm trying to, because this also it hits something in my script that I keep referencing that I've been told to make more like Scream. It's so difficult to make Sydney be the target and to feel under threat the entire time, and yet we know she will never die, and it's such a hard thing to do to make, but yet that's what horror does over and over again, is give you the final girl, but yet we go into each entry and we're like, whoa, Sydney, I hope you get, it's like Sydney will be fine. And I wonder if the Casey of it all, this is completely imagined by me, if the real engine behind these murders is Billy wanting vengeance, if to throw people off of his scent, have the first murder after this year to be seem somewhat random, and in their conversations, you know, Stu saying like, can it be Casey? Because maybe it was like Billy giving Stu one that would also satisfy maybe some vengeance on his side. But again, that's all just fan fiction.
Yeah, I honestly, I never really even picked up on that line. Like it kind of went in one ear out the other about the like, oh, you broke up with her, I thought you would left her for me. But I think I think you are correct in that assessment that he killed her because of that, because in the scene in Blockbuster with Randy, Stu, and Billy, Randy's goes on and on about how the girlfriend motive is like the perfect motive because people want to kill their girlfriends for any little reason. So like I never even
I was like, oh, because when I was reading that dialogue, I was like, oh, because I will say it's one of my favorite things of the whole film is that one of our first conversations about it, they're like outing each other, but then also kind of, they're like playing cat and mouse. They're not outing each other because they're not admitting to it, but to know that those two are the killers, the casualness and like the cat and mouse game that they're playing about it is kind of brilliant. Like once you know the ending, it's more fun to watch that and go like, these two are legitimate psychopaths.
And as Colin, you already stated, it's so gutsy to just from the start be like, well, we all think it's Billy, right? You know, from the first time we see him, Sydney, and then have fun with us.
That Sydney, that was the other thing that was one of my bigger takeaways that I really liked about it, is that we don't just feel that way as the viewer and as like the way we're meant to feel. Sydney also feels that, which allows us to trust her a little bit more because we don't think she's just a big dummy. We're like, no, like she would have every reason to try to think, no way would my boyfriend do that. But she is very quick to be like, your ass just came through the window and a cell phone just fell out of your pocket. You fucking did it. And I love that. Like that does allow a little bit more trust and then allows us to go back and forth so much because we're seeing she's willing to go put herself out there and go like, no, you fucking did it. I don't care if you're my boyfriend. I don't care if we've been together 2 years. You did it, you know?
Yeah, and I could see an early note being to dumb her down. You know, no, she needs to be
especially
completely
for the time,
in the dark.
Too, yeah,
but the fact that she's pretty intuitive the entire
even
movie.
though I saw like one of the takes someone was having about like why this movie's so iconic was like how it's like the women are so progressive, and I was like, so progressive. Like again, I will give it to Sydney that like for the time, I love that they let her be right in front of it and go, no, I think he did it. But like, I do genuinely love that. But I was like, okay, gang, like, let's take a breath. Let's
right.
I don't know about that. But that wasn't what the movie was meant to be anyway. But I just thought that was interesting. But
on page 78, there is a location description that I enjoyed. It's Stu's house. It says Stu's house, which sits alone in a clearing, big and ominous, with no neighbors in sight. A huge old home, just ripe for a night of fun and ... terror.
Yeah.
I like that there's little like schlocky moments like that in the script.
Agreed.
Because again, it just, there's so many things that are reinforcing like, this is a movie, we're having fun with this. Which is fun. Then my last note after that is just like the iconic garage death scene.
Yes.
Like I love the way Tatum dies. It's so brutal.
Yeah.
It's so impossible as well.
So
but
impossible.
In that perfect horror movie way. But like
I literally
I love how she doesn't believe it all the way up until the end, until it's like, babe.
This is happening.
But then like their fight scene is also like, it's better on the page, dare I say, because watching it, I had forgotten the choreography of that fight scene in the movie, and like it's ridiculous. Like she just ducks down and the killer like runs into her and like Scooby-Doo like flips over her, and like
it is comedic.
There's a couple
it's comedic.
There's a couple of moments of real clunky action, and dare I say, I don't know that, you know, Craven is the best at directing and cutting action, because there's that whole sequence that felt a little clunky. But even there's a scene, well, I guess this is later, when Gail is kicked or pushed, and it's just like, whoa, and then it's just her like falling into frame next to Dewey. It's very, I don't feel like it was storyboarded for action. And then also when Ghostface attacks Sydney, and Sydney just, you know, kind of kicks him with her foot, and he's like, whoa, you know, there's a lot of those cheats. You know, Jamie Kennedy, when he's shot, and he like slams down into this table. But anyway, yes, I found that the action is a little clunky in a lot of the sequences.
I will say the one part of the whole film, the action that actually really got under my skin and made me feel sick, and I remember I felt this way the first time I saw it, and I really felt this when I watched it the other day, is when they're stabbing each other at the end. That makes me sick. Like, it actually makes me sick, especially because, once again, Matthew Lillard, like, I would say Courtney Cox and Matthew Lillard, like, absolutely shine in this film, because they're so nuanced, but the way he's like, I don't know, man, like, I feel a little like it's sickening. Though. It's sickening, because you're like, no, like you feel, they just do a good, and like the shirt he's wearing too is like that they're both wearing. It really gives you what you need to be like, ew, like they're stabbing each, like you feel it. It's
Do you guys think Billy wanted to? Because like I didn't get this on the page, and I haven't gotten this any other time I've watched the movie, but this time around, I think Billy is straight up wants to kill Stu in that. That's why he accidentally went a little too deep. Like, and then when he's like, give me the knife. And you can see Stu's a little bit like, where, like, what, like, why do you want the knife? He's like, give it to me. And he starts stabbing him more. I think
he's either trying to, or is totally fine if he died. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like he's kind of like, I'm pushing my limits. Like, I'm not directly trying to murder him, but I'm also like totally fine if he dies.
I also felt on the page, this is where we got into certain things being shifted around in the edit, or maybe rewritten before shooting. But I mean, they bring the dad out earlier on the page in the script than they do in the film. And I was like, that's a good decision, because you don't want the dad just on the floor through that whole thing. And also the stabbing is a shorter exchange, but then you could tell whether this was found on the day as they blocked it, that it needed to be drawn out, and they needed to really live in that. And then I think that's why it becomes so iconic.
So more brutal.
And I could see an actor like Lillard, because there's like 5 or 6 lines that aren't in the script during that. And I'm like, oh, they really let that breathe. And that was smart, because it now is such an iconic scene. Real quick, before I forget, it on 70 or 69. So this scene, Billy and Stu actually meet up, and Billy says, how did you do? Stu says, piece of cake, she'll be there. Basically, they're trying to convince Sydney to come to this party, that they know it might be hard to do everything that's going on. And Billy says, thanks, buttwort. You did good. And Stu says, so you're going to try to make up with Sid? Yada, yada, yada. But so this scene is showing us that they're the killers. Or are we meant to read that and go, oh, they just really want Sydney there so that he can hook up with her?
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, or maybe it was shot and taken out because it felt like, oh, they're the killers. I don't know.
It
I
gives
couldn't
it
tell
away
the
a little
intention.
bit too much. When I read that, the way I interpreted it was like, it's like one of those double entendre scenes where it's like, where like on the surface, we're supposed to think that they're talking about like, oh, it's a piece of cake to get her to go there, man, because I got your back. Like, you're going to get back with your girl, blah, blah, blah. But like, when you know the twist, it's very obvious. And then he's like, you ready for a night of hard partying? He's like, hell yeah. And it's like,
I
will say my first pass as a woman, I'm like, oh, he's just trying to help him fuck her. Like that, like I hate to say that, but like that was, but Colin, you're absolutely right. It's like, once you know the twist, you go back and you're like, it feels a little...
Well, it's when you know the twist, it's pretty on the nose. It's pretty on the nose, because like that they're and like, and then there's moments like that in the movie as well. Like in the movie when Tatum and Stu and Sydney are walking out of the school and they're talking about even having the house party at first, and then they convince her, and then you stay when that like Tatum and Sydney walk away, and you stay with Stu for a second, and he kind of like, and you just think like every other time I've watched the film, it's just like, he's, you know, excited for the thing, but then like when you really clue into it, it's like, oh yeah, he's excited because like, their plan
100%
because he got her there, blah blah blah. There's another moment, another brilliant kind of characterization with Matthew Lillard at the party, and it's when Sydney is going to walk out the front door, and then there's a jump scare with Billy showing up at like, hey, he's here, and he's at the door unexpectedly, and Stu says, oh yeah, you guys can talk up in my parents' room and do like whatever. In that moment, Matthew Lillard chose to like cup two hands and kind of go like kind of shove his hands downward as if you're stabbing someone. And then right after that, Billy looks at him and goes, subtlety, Stu, look it up in a dictionary. And like, I thought that was genius. Like these little tiny moments that you couldn't put that on a page. It would almost be too cheesy to write that in. These are these moments that an actor can like bring to your character that like we always talk about. You can never plan for these things, but like I love that because I'd never noticed that. But I'm like, ooh, I love that they kind of breadcrumb these moments in there, without even hitting it over the head. But
on that note, just to give Arquette his flowers, David Arquette, you know, I'm sure you both know, but well, we know from reading the script that he's described very differently. Dewey's described very differently. And one thing I'll say is that I think is also lacking in the modern Scream scripts that we've already kind of touched on, but Dewey is a good character to like expound upon it, is this script gives actors some real specifics to kind of build other moments off of. They're not starting with nothing. And I feel like a lot of the modern scripts are starting with nothing. There's not even a room for Jenna Ortega to say, oh, I like this quirk. What if I brought this to the surface? Or, oh, this character has this nervous tick. There's not even, not that actors can't just start from scratch and do it on their own, but I don't think they should have to. I think the script should be offering up things for the actor to then, you know, either expand or shrink. And Arquette, I thought, was so insightful to, I don't remember the story, but it's either that he was being seen for Randy or seen for someone, or not seen at all. But then he wanted to be Dewey, even though it was written to be, I think, like a bigger kind of lumbering guy. The scene where he's talking to his chief and he's licking an ice cream cone. I was looking in the script to see if that was in there. I don't think it is.
I don't think it is.
That's such a great actor decision. Because, you know, he's meant to be, and it really informs Dewey's character throughout the whole franchise of he's meant to be this
you're so right. The fact that we haven't mentioned Dewey yet is kind of crazy. He does.
I love that moment.
It's so ridiculous.
And the details Kevin gives him of like, well, you know, Deputy Dewey, when, you know, and, you know, Dwight, but nobody calls me that. Mama, he gives it the character so much, and Arquette like picks all of it up and just goes even further with it. I mean, they all do, like you said, Lillard does too. But that ice cream scene, I was like, that's the character now.
And it offsets like the sheriff, because he's like smoking that cigarette. And he's like, I thought you were done, and it adds this very weird like.
Yeah, he's like, where have you been? Well, he's been getting ice cream.
He's been getting
that just
ice
shows
cream.
you how he doesn't take it seriously. And like, you don't have to say anything about it. It's just this little visual component. And you can see he has this little micro moment where he kind of looks at the ice cream and he's like, but then he continues eating it. And
Yeah.
like,
And I could feel, I would love to, I always see David Arquette at horror conventions. I have friends that have worked with him. I've never worked with him, so I don't feel like I could ever just go up and have a conversation. But I'm tempted to because it feels like the type of thing that he came to Wes with. And what I think is great is when you could say, well, we'll do one take like that. But if you know it's the right decision, you should do all takes like that because then you're not going to be limited in the edit to just have that one to pull from. And also, I don't remember the blocking, but when you're over his shoulder, do we still kind of see the ice cream cone? So then the cops' takes are going to be limited to the one ice cream take. So I would love to know if David Arquette on the day said, Wes, I would love to have an ice cream cone through this entire scene. And I would love to hear if Wes was like, yes, do it. No question, not limiting it to one take, but really like agreed with him.
It certainly adds to the kind of strange tone, but I think the iconic tone of it, where it's like, again, you're like, where are we? What is this? But in like the fun way, where you're just like, and one of his other amazing line reads is when Gail's like, well, my demographic is like 11 to 25, whatever. And then when he's like, and like he says something about, him, whatever. And he's like, well, I was 24 for a whole year or whatever. It's like the way he delivers it is like, it's already a good line. It's kind of a ridiculous line, but the way he delivers it, he plays it earnestly, which I think Colin and I talk about that a lot. It's like a lot of times you'll read these characters and often the portrayals of characters you read that stick out are people who play characters very earnestly when they could very easily be read not earnestly.
Right.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. No, it goes further playing it earnest. It actually, and the instinct oftentimes could be to go too big or to have a wink.
Totally. And
but
it's
David Arquette's
just like
so
that
good.
Dude. He's just that dude.
Yeah.
He could have been this total doofus, but I like that he played him more sincere because then you really do actually, he's one of the few characters that you do kind of emotionally care for. Yeah. Because he is such a sweetie.
Totally.
My last note is just a difference between script and screen that I'm pretty certain this wasn't on the page, but like I love the choice to do it. It's back at the very beginning when Casey's getting murdered and the killer's above her about to deal the final blow and she reaches up and takes his mask off. I thought that was such a fun addition to add for the movie because it doesn't do all that much, but it adds an extra sense of mystery because it's like you don't even have this moment of realization on her face or anything like that, but you're it sets up this expectation that who is this? This is going to be the whole thing this whole time of like who the killer is, obviously. But
it wasn't on the page, right? I think on the page it just says he's standing over her. One thing in the script that I really liked, and I know there must have been a reason. I'm curious to know what you two think. Randy kills Stu in the script, and unless I read it wrong, but it felt like Randy comes back in. Let me go to it real quick. I get why they wait a minute. Let me see. Yeah, so Stu. Sorry, 1 second. So I thought as I read it that this is actually better. It's better that Randy has a victory, especially because he does become a larger part of the franchise than some of the other characters. And also, he's the one that's always talking about film. He's the one that's always talking about the references. Stu getting killed with the TV felt like a full circle moment for Randy and Stu, which were always a little antagonistic toward each other. And I wonder why they changed that. And I wonder if either of you have an opinion on why, if the filmed version works better, why? I'm going to try to find this exact section though, real quick.
So in the script, because I don't fully remember, I was wondering this too about if Sydney killed him with a TV in the script or not. Because I can't remember, but it is Randy who does it in the script.
Yeah, Randy is desperately trying to pry away from Stu. He grabs hold of the television set, tries to pull himself off the floor out of Stu's clutch. His hands find the top of the TV. He yanks on it, gripping it with his hands, bringing it to the ground with force, crashing the TV VCR onto Stu's head. Yeah.
I think it works double duty in that having Sydney do it, it puts her more in the position of power here at the climactic sequence, but then also we're still thinking that Randy's dead in that moment in the script. And so then there's like kind of
Right.
a secondary like jump scare at the end where Randy's here. He's like, oh, I'm here, whatever. And then, but
yeah,
I do like that in terms of like, I like the like poetic justice of it
Yeah.
all. Of Randy doing it, the film buff, killing him with a TV that is currently playing a horror movie.
Yeah.
I think that's fun and like tonally works really well, but I can understand why they have Sydney do it because she has to ultimately like kill these guys who have brutalized her now for 120 pages. But
and she already does get assistance from Gale, and maybe it did feel like they were splitting up the kind of agency too much in that finale.
Oh, I'm certain the note was like Sydney has to be the one. For sure. Because that is more, that is, I think, ultimately a little bit more satisfying, like because of everything. Okay, so the real question is, Andrew, do you have daddy do's for us about this script?
Oh my gosh, I do. Why don't I go? Can I go second?
Sure.
Because I want to pull up my. I wrote them in my phone actually.
For sure.
Yeah.
Colin.
Someone else go, and then I'll hop in.
I have 3 daddy do's.
Give it to us, daddy.
And I might do some amendments as I'm talking about them, but we'll see. Daddy do number 1. Daddy do utilize formatting as an extension of the genre. I love how the writer utilized formatting to hone exposition, delivery, and the action. The writer guides your eye with ellipses, negative space on the page, and single lines of action in such a way that the next bit of information you receive feels more like a revelation than a natural conclusion to the events preceding it. This engages your imagination more effectively and adds a sort of flow to the read that keeps the pace moving. For a great example of this, read the opening sequence, pages 1 through 18. I do think that Daddy Do pretty much is mostly applicable to that opening sequence, as we talked about before, because later as you get into the script, he still uses ellipses and he'll still indicate characters in like the single line. The most effective portion of that I saw, which is in a different context because it gives a more comedic tone to the script, is at the very end climactic scene when everything seems lost. It seems like the killers actually have the upper hand, but then we pull back and we see Gale Weathers there with a gun. In the script, it's actually this great moment because, oh no, all hope is lost. And then you hear like a gun cock or something. And in the script, it says on a single line, it's like, and then like we see, it's like, it's Gale Weathers, reporter for Inside Story, which I thought was so funny and just like such like a wink to the audience. But yeah, the formatting is really good in the beginning, so kind of ignore that for the rest of it. But yeah, there's that.
Real quick, you know what I loved that I don't think I really cared about until this recent rewatch was when we see Gale, maybe it's for the first time, we see her cameraman's jacket facing us and it has the name of her show. And it was such a great like tableau of, well, we can't do a lower third because we're not actually watching this on TV, but you could have the logo in on the jacket and frame her.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what a smart decision to have that in the frame. Yeah.
Totally. Daddy Do number 2. Daddy Do strategize your jump scares for maximum impact. The movie has some perfectly executed jump scares, like on page 35 when Sydney's on the phone with the killer. We think he's outside, then he bursts the closet. More than just scary, unexpected imagery, the perfect jump scare plays upon the subversion of expectations. It's your job as the writer to lead the reader to a seemingly inevitable conclusion, only for the rug to be pulled out from under them at the last moment. Check out the climactic sequence for some good jump scare moments that also include very clever plant and payoffs. And then Daddy Do number 3. Daddy Do craft your red herrings with focused intention. The story does a great job of showing you the twist that Billy's the killer, but making you second guess it by making us believe he's a red herring. While there's no way of knowing Stewart's involvement, the way the writer sets up the reader to believe Billy's innocence is very well crafted, making the ultimate twist feel like more of a betrayal, since we, just like Sydney, were forced to cast our better judgments aside.
Love. Spot on.
Those are my daddy dues.
I have 2 daddy dues. You want me to do them? Do mine? I've kind of already hit on them, but the ones that I wrote down, I had. Well, let me think of the best way to say this. Okay, I had years ago when I was first taking improv class. This is not to give myself a compliment on your show, but I had a teacher tell me, you're really good at this, and you know why? And I said, I don't know. She said, you always bring specifics, and I was like, oh, okay. I share it because I don't think she knew how important of a note that was to get, because the amount of specifics I might bring to a script or to a character sometimes I think is too much, or it can be alienating, etc. And I'm getting those notes right now, currently on a script. But watching this again, talking about how horror is liberating, I found rewatching this and reading the script specifically was liberating, because I would say, Daddy, do give your characters nuance and idiosyncratic behavior. Let your horror characters be real people, because across the board, everyone in here gets to be a real person, even Gail, even Dewey. And in the current films, they just aren't allowed to be that interesting. So that would be my first one. The ice cream scene is probably the best example of that. Or Lillard complaining about his mom and how mad she's going to be. But on that note, what I think is important to point out is that should be happening already at the script level.
Yes.
Because what I do see happen is
that's great.
Weird movie to reference, but Twisters.
Oh my
Twisters. Twisters is a movie where the characters as written have zero quirk or personality. I can't tell them apart from anyone. But then within the film, you can tell there were scenes where they were told to improvise. And all of a sudden, everybody comes to life. And they're saying, but they're speaking unlike they do in any other scene. So then the personality becomes incongruent with the rest of the film. So my point is, don't just let that be something that you find on the day through pockets of improv, because then it's going to be incongruent with the rest of your writing. Whereas with this script, it's already there, and then the actors just dialed it up and leaned in. But never do I feel like someone's, even though they are improvising, I don't feel that they're improvising, because the script was already had that energy. That is variation.
That is a golden daddy do. Fine. I'm a nuance junkie, like injected into my veins, as real as a person can be. But you saying almost like when you're refining's my new word. Colin knows this. Rewriting is like not resonating with me these days. It's refining for me.
Totally.
But refinement is the time to go, okay, let's pretend, let's literally write a version I'm going to imagine of these two characters improvising, and write it and see what happens and see what you can. I love that. That's so great, Andrew. I'm obsessed with that.
Yeah. Well, my other daddy do, I just have these two. We've already touched on this, but I would have said, like, daddy, do keep horror fun. That's what I would say. But more than that, maybe this feels like now I'm saying the opposite, but keep horror fun, I guess, without it stealing away. Let there be comedy until it starts to steal from the horror. And I feel like, out here, everyone's always saying no to horror comedy, no horror comedy, no horror comedy. Meanwhile, every horror movie has way too much comedy in it, even for my taste. I think Scream is a great example of, and it's why maybe they would take out a line like, this is for having a small wiener. It was really calibrated to where the comedy doesn't underserve the horror. If anything, it helps it, because I feel like these people are, even though, we talked about the dialogue now and again, I feel like they're somewhat real, they're somewhat likable, relatable, etc. Whereas, there's a horror film, we don't have to get into it, but there's a horror film currently that I feel like the comedy by the end of it needed to be dialed back, and the writing needed to sober up at a certain point, and they refused to where by the time they got to their finale, you could have put Benny Hill music over it or Ferris Bueller's Day Off soundtrack, and it would have played the exact same way. So I think Scream is that perfect example of comedy and horror that mixes well, and both are heightened instead of taking from one another.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
I think I know what movie you're referencing there, Andrew.
Maybe.
Is it a very, very popular movie right now?
Very popular. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Film Twitter loves it.
Film Twitter. I have 2 daddy do's. They're pretty simple, but my first one was find films that light you up and let it guide the stories you're meant to tell, because this film was so clearly Kevin Williamson. While the actual moment of the drop-in of him watching a doc and then having the window open, all that this movie only could have come through him if he was primed by watching films that really lit him up and inspired him. And then he made a movie that was so successful. And so much of that was because he was also paying homage to these other films, that it's like, I think sometimes it's easy to get stuck in what you think you're supposed to write. Whereas films like this are just the absolute proof that you need, that like write the shit that lights you up. Because chances are, if you are lit up about it, there's going to be a whole ton of people who are also lit up about it. And I just thought that this was such an example of that. Like, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Follow that compass. My second daddy do was be in on it. When exploring old tropes and dynamics we've come to expect, allowing the reader in on the fact that we know this is tropey provides more trust and intelligence around the rest of the storytelling. This film got to play out old tropes that came from the movies it was inspired by, while also weaving a narrative around the tropes into the story in a way that felt nostalgic and modern at the same time. Those,
which I don't even know how they did it.
Yeah, it's really that interwoven.
The fact that it's a classic horror film and a classic meta horror comedy.
Impressive.
I mean, it's just
that's why it's so special. It's just unlike any
it's
other
true.
horror film.
And I think,
especially for that time.
100%. I'm going to jump into my only daddy don't. And honestly, you know, this is a me thing. Don't settle for mid dialogue. While I don't think most slasher films are ever truly remembered for how great their dialogue was, I do think taking the time to make it a bit more, whether you want to say real, grounded, whatever, just a little bit more thought out, allows the horror aspect to feel more chilling. The more we can believe even tiny, small details, as to, like you were saying, Andrew, with nuance, the more the scary stuff really does hit, making us feel like this could actually happen to us too. Again, I'm not saying the dialogue has to sound like how you and your friend talk. I just felt like there was a couple moments in this where it's like, if we're kind of calling out a generation, then do it a little better. You know what I mean? It felt a little mid. It just felt mid for me. That's all. So
I wonder where he got some of the slang. There's some slang in this where I'm like, I was a kid in the 90s and I never said goon fuck or buttwort.
Goon fuck.
Goon fuck is when Tatum realizes the garage doors close and she says, shit piss.
Yeah.
I'm like, girl,
shit piss.
Not
you
today.
know what horror movie had really fun dialogue that's also a social commentary? I think it's the Gen Z Scream is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I think the dialogue in that is super cheeky and fun and like
so smart. It's so smart,
but
though.
in a way that the dialogue's always pushing forward the theme of that they're exploring with like kids.
Yes, that's actually a very interesting. Yeah, agreed. Very thought out though, like so thought out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything's intentional with that dialogue.
All right, Andrew, do you have a daddy do for us?
A daddy
don't.
Mean?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I've already kind of recanted on the two that I had, but what I had written down was, Daddy, don't let a bunch of action happen off screen. You know, the mom stuff happening. But again, we've already talked about, you know, there wasn't room for it, but maybe the middle ground could have helped, seeing the funeral or seeing the, her dad and her in mourning together or something. Sounds like a real basic thought, so maybe it's a bad note, but I also found myself wanting it. And then the other thing I said was, Daddy, don't give exposition through newscasts.
But this film kind of did it well.
But again, this film did it well. And I will say, in the script that I've been working on, I attempted to have all my exposition be very organic and earned, and through either long conversations or even a seance that brings about a flashback that we live through and all this stuff. And you know what? The notes that I've gotten to make this thing tighter and tighter and tighter guess what now happens is somebody, is handed a page of an old journal and they're like, oh, I know what this curse is and I know how we can stop it.
Yeah.
Let's go. So it's also like sometimes you just have to get to the point where it's a TV news report, or it's a microfiche from an old library, or it's a letter I found. And unfortunately that, has to be implemented for page count.
Fair.
Yeah. I don't have any daddy don'ts, but I will piggyback off of both of yours because I agree wholeheartedly. And I guess my main one would be don't have your characters say shit this. Oh, fuck, I'm locked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
It gets hard sometimes in a horror script when everybody just does, or what I would normally say is, oh, God, oh, fuck, oh, fuck. But then you, as a writer, you're like, well, I can't just say, oh, fuck all the time.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you
My
you would
first
say.
draft is,
I don't know if you would say shit
My
piss.
first draft always has a lot of F-bombs that then I have to go back and be like, Carly, we really don't want to like overwhelm the reader with how many F-bombs are in this script.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That's fair.
Andrew, this has been an absolute pleasure. Oh my God. Like, how fun was this?
I had a blast too, so thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for coming on. Yeah. This was great.
This was so fun. Thank you. And hopefully we will talk to you again, sir.
I hope so.
Yes, you want to let our readers know how to find you on all the socials and everything like that? Our readers, our listeners.
I'm just Andrew Bowser, director on most things, or the character is Onyx the Fortuitous, I think is where he is. They're the same guy and they're the same account pretty much. I post on one and then post on the other. But yeah, Andrew Bowser, director is my more personal social media.
Gorgeous. Perf. Thank you so much, Andrew.
We did it. Thank you for listening to Script Daddy. Script Daddy is executive produced and hosted by Carly Casey and Colin Moretz, with additional production assistance from the incredible Scott Simmock and our amazing sound mixer, Ryan Fee. Our artwork was done by Josh Alvarado.
If you love Script Daddy as much as we do, please tell your friends. Follow us on your preferred podcast platform and give us a rating and review. It really, really helps. We love you, Script Babies. For all inquiries, please email scriptdaddypodcast@gmail.com.